order. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I impose the call of the Senate.
The Senate is now under call.
Mr.
Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and that the Sergeant-at-Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, if you be so kind as to stand. In our tradition, we always start with prayer. Today, I'm going to ask members to pause for a moment of silent prayer and reflections. The moment of silence will be roughly 30 seconds or more, but I hope that it is enough time for you to center yourself. And then following that moment of silent prayer and reflection, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, members. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. The Secretary will take the roll.
Abler, Barr, Bolden, Carlson, Champion, Clark, Coleman, Swadzinski, Dames, Dibble, Dornick, Draheim, Drazkowski, Duckworth, Farnsworth, Fateh, Frentz, Green, Grunhagen, Gustafson, Hochschild, Herr, Heinzmann, Hemmingson Yeager, Hoffman, Holmstrom, Housley, Howe, Jasinski, Johnson, Johnson Stewart, Klein, Coran, Kroon, Kunish, Kupek, Lang, Latz, Liskey, Limmer, Lucero, Mann, Marty, Matthews, May Quaid, McEwen, Miller, Mohammed, Murphy, Nelson, Verbaten, Pappas, Pa, Port, Pratt, Putnam, Rarick, Rasmussen, Rest, Seeberger, Utke, Weber, Wiesenberg, Westland, Westrom, Wickland, Zhang.
Members, a quorum is present. The following members intend to vote from a remote location pursuant to Rule 40.7. Senators Carlson, Coleman, Heitzman, Coran, Miller, Verbaten, and Weber. Members, if you'd like to follow along with me, I am reading from today's Senate agenda, which is dated Wednesday, March 11, 2026. We will begin with the fifth order of business, reports of committees. Senator Murphy for a motion to adopt committee reports.
Mr. President, I move the committee reports printed in the agenda be adopted.
On that motion, on the adoption of the committee reports, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members, we will now go to the sixth order of business, which is second reading of Senate bills. The Secretary will read the Senate file numbers.
Senate file numbers 3640 and 3800.
The Senate files have been given their second reading. Members will now move to the eighth order of business, which is introduction and first reading of Senate bills. The bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Members, there is a change on that Senate bills introduction list. If you go to page number 4, you will see Senate file number 4339. That bill has been referred to the Committee on Transportation. Members, as I mentioned, all of the bills listed on today's introduction calendar are given their first reading and referred as indicated. Members will now proceed to the ninth order of business, which is motions and resolutions. We will adopt the author's motion as one motion. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Members I will now call on some individual members. The first member I will call on is Senator Mann.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that Senate File 513 be withdrawn from the Committee on Health and Human Services and be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. That's my bill, and talk to both chairs. Thank you.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. We'll now go to Senator Pappas.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File 2820 be withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and returned to its author.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Senator Pappas, you now have a motion for Senate File number 2824.
Mr. President, I move that Senate File 2824 be withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and returned to its author, and I'm the author of both.
All right, I'm going to deal with this motion, and then I'm going to go back to the other one, okay? On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Pappas moved that Senate File number 2820 be withdrawn from the Committee on Taxes and returned to its author. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Senator Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate File 3572 be withdrawn from the Committee on Ed Policy and re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety, and yes, yes.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, I'm calling on Senator Murphy to designate special orders. Sorry, we have one more. Senator Seeberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Senate File number 4206 be withdrawn from the Committee on Environment, Climate, and Legacy and be re-referred to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety. This is my bill, and both chairs agree.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. We are now remaining under motions and resolutions. Now I'm calling on Senator Murphy to designate special orders. Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, pursuant to Rule 26, I designate the following bills made special orders for immediate consideration.
Members, the list is on your desk. It is dated March 11, 2026. We will begin with Senate File number 3596. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President and members, the bill before you today answers a clear and urgent question from Minnesotans from all walks of life and all around the state. Who is going to help prevent an imminent and unnecessary eviction crisis? Every month, families across Minnesota receive notices demanding payment within 14 or 30 days or face losing their homes. Today, we're facing a perfect storm for working families where nothing is affordable. Rising costs of food, healthcare, school supplies, and gas, combined with massive federal cuts to programs like SNAP and supportive housing, are pushing more people to their breaking point. Senate File 3596 provides the first significant step this session to respond to the affordability crisis by providing $40 million in proven emergency rental assistance to counties and tribal nations to prevent homelessness and keep families stable and housed. We have heard heartbreaking accounts from communities across this state. A union member detained by ICE in the parking lot of their workplace and taken to a facility in Texas, held for 2 weeks in heinous conditions before finally being granted a writ of habeas corpus, released, and able to return to their family in Minnesota. Or a family of 4 whose lives were changed overnight when the president revoked legal authorization status for Afghani refugees. Both parents were no longer able to work, drying up streams of revenue for the family, and they could not pay rent. They are still scrambling to seek assistance to keep up with bills, but they are unlikely to meet their financial needs this month. These are not isolated incidents, Mr. President. They reflect widespread disruption to households already living paycheck to paycheck. For nearly every one of these harrowing stories, we also know of the countless inspiring stories of neighbors stepping up, buying and delivering groceries, paying utility bills, delivering rides to school and work, and so much more. But community goodwill and mutual aid cannot replace our responsibility of the state to prevent further unnecessary suffering in the forms of eviction and homelessness. Recent analysis from the CURA qualifies that disruption. Because of Operation Metro Surge, total excess rent debt across Minnesota is estimated to be at $27.4 to $51.3 million. That is on top of roughly $44.6 million in rent debt typically expected during any 2-month period in the state. These figures do not even account for March 2026 and beyond. The funds in this bill are available thanks to Miss Geraldine Tyler, a 94-year-old Black woman from North Minneapolis who successfully sued Hennepin County after it wrongfully seized and sold her home. The $109 million settlement has about $40 million left unclaimed, which would otherwise cancel to the general fund. Using this money to keep families housed honors her fight for justice. Just as she stood up to a government in the wrong, so too today we have the chance to rewrite history for thousands of Minnesota families across this state. We must pass this $40 million lifeline to help Minnesotans in every corner of the state stay stable, housed, and safe. And Mr. President, I have the A52 amendment.
Senator Port offers the what's the number
52.
again? The A52. The Secretary will report the A52 amendment.
Senator Port moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 2, Line 8, delete everything after 4 and insert tribal land. This is the A52 amendment.
Senator Port, to your A52 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment is mostly a technical correction to change the words off-reservation trust land, which are antiquated words, to tribal land. And it also allows tribes who do not operate rental assistance programs to opt out.
Any further discussion on the A52 amendment? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Port, for the bill and the amendment. I don't see that amendment yet, but the change in the tribal portion, does that tighten up the language to ensure that there isn't a double dipping with the tribal entities and the counties?
Senator Port, he was asking if you will yield. She will yield. Senator Port, to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President and Senator Draheim. I'm not entirely sure what you mean by that, but it does specify that the tribal lands who use the counties instead to operate a program are able to opt out because they don't operate a program. So then that money would go to the tribes or to the counties.
Senator Draheim, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm just seeing the amendment right now, and I appreciate the update in the nomenclature for the bill. But I don't think it addressed one concern that I have, and with all the talk of fraud, every week we get a new fraud report. I am just concerned that there isn't tight enough language in the bill to make sure a Minnesota resident couldn't apply twice in counties where there is tribal land. And I guess I'd ask the author to yield for a question.
Senator Port, will you yield? She will yield. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Port. So what I'm looking for, is there any clarifying language, or what is stopping someone that happens to be a member of one of our wonderful 11 tribes in Minnesota being able to apply both under the tribal portion of your bill and for the county portion? I see no communication designed in the bill to prevent that from happening.
Senator Port, to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I'm not sure that this has come up. I think it has been consistently the practice of both the counties and the tribes to work together to share information and verify that information. If you have already received payment, you would no longer be eligible because that need would have been met. So I think that is the way. Also, in the bill, it does require your Minnesota homestead. So if you're living off tribal land, then you would be able to apply through the counties. But if you live on tribal land, it would be through the tribes.
Senator Draheim, just a gentle reminder that we're on the A52 amendment. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I am aware we're on the A52 dealing with tribal land and changing the language. I'll hold off for now. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the A52 amendment? Senator Port, did you have another comment?
Mr. President, I request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on the A52 amendment. Members, please vote. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
And Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
And Senator Heinzman votes aye.
And Senator Heisman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 66 ayes and 0 nays, the A52 amendment is adopted. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would move the A51 amendment, please.
Senator Port offers the A51 amendment. The Secretary will report the A51 amendment.
Senator Port moves to amend Senate File number 3596 as follows. Page 1 after line 10, insert. This is the A51 amendment.
Senator Port to your A51 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this is a clarifying amendment to ensure that the specific providers that are allowed to authorize and run this program are spelled out specifically. I want to thank Senator Draheim for also working on this same piece of work. It enumerates exactly who can administer the program so that we know it's trusted and vetted partners. And then, Mr. President, it does allow for a 3% admin to be taken by the entity that administers the program. And I ask for a yes vote and a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the A75 amendment to the A51.
Senator Rest offers the A75 amendment, which is an amendment to the amendment, and the Secretary will report the A72 amendment to the amendment.
Senator Rest moves to amend the A51 amendment to Senate File number 36 as follows. This is the A75 amendment to the amendment.
Senator Rest to your A75 amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Port mentioned one of the features of her amendment was to provide administrative costs to the counties to administer this program. Seems to me that we're all participating, all of us, all levels of government are participating in providing this assistance, and that a county, say, for example, that is getting close to $2 million should not be getting $60,000 in administrative costs, and at no other level of government is being given administrative cost. Neither are any entity that is responsible for distributing these funds, and that includes the counties. Mr. President, I request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Any other discussion on the A75 amendment to the amendment? Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. I will say that my biggest concern with this is in greater Minnesota, where counties don't have the staff to implement these programs, and they contract them out to trusted, vetted partners. Emergency rental assistance in those counties has already run out, so those programs aren't currently up and running, and they may need some admin to do this, but I encourage folks to vote their district.
Any other discussion on the A75 amendment to the amendment? Senator Rest, I see you standing. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my county, I ask you to vote yes and not allow these administrative expenses.
Senator Lucero.
They can do it on their own.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to encourage members to vote yes in favor of the Rest Amendment.
Any other discussion on the A75 amendment to the amendment? Seeing no discussion, the Secretary will take the roll on the A75 amendment to the amendment. Members, please vote. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
And Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Coran votes aye.
Senator Coran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Heinzman votes aye. Thank you, Mr. President.
And Senator Heisman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 34 ayes and 32 nays, the A75 amendment to the amendment is adopted. Members, we're now on the underlying amendment as amended. Any other discussion? Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to rise to thank Senator Port. This is what I attempted to do in committee, and after committee, with talking with nonpartisan staff, they suggested these changes, so I appreciate it. Senator Port, I do support the A51. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the A51 amendment as amended? Senator Port.
Mr. President, I will remove the roll call.
Roll call removed. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A51 is adopted as amended. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. If you could tell the front desk the A37 could be thrown away, that'd be wonderful.
Front desk, the A37 can be thrown away. I did what you instructed. Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just walking up there to let him know that. I would like to offer the A38 amendment.
Senator Draheim offers the A38 amendment. The secretary will report the A38 Draheim amendment.
Senator Draheim moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 4, delete subdivision 8 and insert. This is the A38 amendment.
Senator Draheim to your A38 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And as you know, I like transparency. I love reports. And what my A38 does, it modifies when the reports come in. So it requires a report every 30 days rather than every 3 months. So it just kind of shortens up when we get the data back on this bill. So beginning 45 days after the effective date and every 30 days after, we would get a report which would include the total number of households for rental assistance, et cetera, whatever program it is, the demographic characteristics, the household size, income, et cetera. And it also includes the minimum, mean, medium, maximum amount of emergency rental assistance per household. And then, of course, how much remains of each fund. I urge everybody to vote green. Thank you.
Members, we're on the A38 Draheim amendment. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Draheim, for this and for letting me know about it ahead of time. I will take this as a friendly amendment, though I will say that this is a lot of reporting to do now with no administration costs available. But I think the more information that we have on the rental needs and assistance across the state, the more we are able to plan for the rest of session. So I'll take this as a friendly amendment.
Any other discussion on the Draheim A38 amendment before we vote? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A38 is adopted. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. President. As everyone in this chamber knows, Minnesota has a massive fraud problem. Estimates are upwards of $9 billion or more in the last few years. And we've done some work here in the Senate to try to get at this fraud and tackle this fraud, including our bill that we passed last year to establish an Office of Inspector General. However, Mr. President, as you know, that bill did not become law because the House didn't enact it. And there's been other ideas that have come forward on how we prevent fraud. And some of those ideas, Mr. President, is that we need to make sure that appropriations support modern fraud prevention infrastructure. And we should not have any grants without dedicated money to prevent fraud. And those aren't just my ideas, Mr. President. Those are the ideas of the Director of Program Integrity, Tim O'Malley, who just came out with his recommendations at the end of last February in his Roadmap to Program Integrity and Fraud Prevention. So, Mr. President, we need to get serious about fraud here in Minnesota. And to that end, I'd like to offer the A48.
Senator Kroon offers the A48 amendment. The Secretary will report the A48 amendment.
Senator Kroon moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 2, line 24, delete. This is the A48 amendment.
Senator Kroon to your A48 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. What the underlying bill here does is it takes $40 million of taxpayer money to establish yet another program to hand out money to certain Minnesotans. And as we've seen, a lot of these programs are rife with fraud, and we don't want this to be another one. So what the A48 amendment does, Mr. President, is it takes 5% of the appropriated amount of that $40 million, and it dedicates that money to evaluate compliance with the requirements of this bill, to detect and prevent misuse of the aid received of the emergency rental assistance distributed under this bill, and to prosecute fraud related to this bill. So in a sense, Mr. President, we're just setting aside a small amount of these appropriations to prevent fraud and to prosecute fraud where it happens, to hold people accountable. And given the amount of fraud that we've had here in Minnesota, I think this is an entirely appropriate approach to these types of programs. If the legislature determines that they want to enact these new programs, we need to make sure that they're not riddled with fraud. And with that, Mr. President, I would encourage everybody to vote yes on the A48.
Any other discussion on the A48? Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have worked carefully on this bill to ensure that it is resistant to fraud. I want to say 3 things about that. We're moving it through trusted programs at the county level, that if there are concerns about fraud, we should each be talking to our own counties. We also worked with the Office of the Legislative Auditor to make sure that we had as strong a protections as possible. And I also want to say we're going to keep helping people, even in the moment when we do need to be addressing fraud. And for that reason, I will say, Senator Kroon, I appreciate your thoughtfulness with this amendment. I think it makes good sense, and it keeps the majority of the program going to rental assistance. So I will accept this as a friendly amendment.
Any other discussion on the A48 Kroon amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails and the A48 amendment is adopted. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Kroon talked about the fraud that we're seeing, and one of the things that was in a recent legislative auditor report was the fact that we set up these programs very quickly based on attestation. And I can tell you, as someone who ran a fraud team, I agree with the legislative auditor that attestation is not an effective fraud prevention tool, Mr. President. So I would like to offer the A40 amendment and request a roll call.
Senator Pratt offers the A40 amendment, and a roll call has been requested and a roll call granted, and the Secretary will report the A40 amendment.
Senator Pratt moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 2, after line 28, insert. This is the A40 amendment.
Senator Pratt to your A40 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is a simple amendment that requires a household to verify that they are eligible and also verify the amount of need.
Any other discussion on the A40 amendment? Senator Lucero.
I will defer to Senator Port.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if Senator Pratt would yield for a question.
Senator Pratt, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Port.
Can Senator Pratt, Mr. President, I'm wondering what documentation needed to verify what that means to the senator.
Senator Pratt, to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Port, we already have rental programs in place. This would simply require them to show that their household meets all the eligible requirements, whether that is a lease or a bill or something along that line, and then also that they show that they're behind. That you know, I recall the Channel 11 report on Sky, who was paying her rent and it was defrauded from her. I think we need to make sure that we have good landlords and real need before we start handing out this money, that they can document that they have the need, that they can document that they meet the eligibility requirements.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, members, that is already the case with these programs. The counties already need to verify both eligibility and need through multiple sources. I will say self-attestation is sometimes the only way that, particularly for utilities, we're able to get the amount that folks need. Because all of the different utility companies don't send individual verification to the counties. So for that reason, I would ask for a no, but I would also say, like, this is already how the program works.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to put the Senate under call for the duration of the amendments.
The Senate is now under call. Members, for clarity, that this call of the Senate will be for the amendments, plural, instead of singular. For the duration of the bill is what it sounds like.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Senator Rasmussen.
I move that further proceedings under the roll call be dispensed with and the Sergeant at Arms be instructed to bring in the absent members.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. We are on the A40 Pratt amendment. Any other discussion? I'm going to go to Senator Port, and then Senator Pratt, you will be the last word, if that's okay. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will take this as a friendly amendment.
All right. So, Senator Pratt, do you still want the roll call vote?
Mr. President, I'll withdraw my my request for a roll call.
Roll call withdrawn. Members, all in favor of adoption of the A40 amendment, say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails. The A40 is adopted. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer the A35 amendment.
Senator Lucero offers the A35 amendment. The Secretary will report the Lucero A35.
Senator Lucero moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 1, after line 15, insert. This is the A35 amendment.
Senator Lucero, to your A35 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This amendment seeks to clarify the definition of households and the eligibility to receive the rental assistance. I encourage a yes vote, and I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. We are members on the A35 Lucero amendment. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I am asking for a no vote on this. During Operation Metro Surge, it has affected the safety and economic well-being of citizens and people with all sorts of lawful status, in addition to those who are undocumented. 71% of the people who have been detained by ICE at this point in Minnesota have had no criminal record of any kind. As of a month ago, people who came from Haiti, sought asylum, and received refugee status had legal status in the United States. And then recently, the President of the United States attempted to take that legal status away at his own whim with an executive order and a tweet. If you have legal status today, under this administration, there is no guarantee that you will continue to have legal status tomorrow. And if legal status can be taken from one group of people, it can be taken from all groups of people. So respectfully, I strongly ask for a no vote. And I will just add that in addition to the migrants from Haiti, Homeland Security Director, former Secretary Kristi Noem, has terminated protections for about 600,000 Venezuelans, 60,000 people from Honduras, Nicaragua, and Nepal, more than 160,000 Ukrainians, and thousands of people from Afghanistan and Cameroon. And some of those are still pending in federal court. So we don't know what lawful status is under this federal administration, Mr. President, and we are here to help Minnesotans. So I ask for a no vote on this amendment.
Members, we are on the Lucero A35 amendment. Any further discussion? Last person we'll hear from is Senator Lucero. You don't have anything else to say? All right. The Secretary will take the roll on the A35 Lucero amendment. Senator Port for those Senator Bowden for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no. Senator Jasinski for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes aye.
Senator Heisman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 33 ayes and 34 nays. The A35 Lucero amendment is not adopted. Senator Lucero. Please, no demonstrations in the chambers. If you do, I'm going to have to instruct the State Patrol and others to remove you. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to offer the A42 amendment.
Senator Lucero offers the A42 amendment. The Secretary will report the A42 amendment.
Senator Lucero moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 5, delete Section 3. This is the A42 amendment.
Senator Lucero to your A42 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under current Minnesota law, there is a 14-day pre-unlawful detainer filing for delinquent rent, and the language in the bill extends that to 30 days. The consequence of that is housing providers will have to further float the costs, such as property tax, hazard insurance, and other factors that simply make it more expensive for tenants that are paying. For that reason, I've offered this amendment. I ask for a yes vote, and I ask for a roll call.
Roll call requested and a roll call granted. Senator Latz.
Mr. President and members, and Senator Lucero, thank you for the opportunity to address on this. It was my amendment in the Judiciary Committee when this matter came through our committee to extend the 14-day notice provision to a 30-day notice provision on a temporary basis while this emergency assistance program is being implemented. I personally do not desire to make that a permanent change for the reasons Senator Lucero already described. However, these are highly unusual times, a very unusual circumstance, and time is needed to get this money into the pipeline, to get the money distributed for the counties to implement the process, and to get the money not through the tenants to the landlords to satisfy their rent obligations. In my judgment, the 14-day notice provision under these particular circumstances would be unfair to the tenants, and it would actually be to the disadvantage of the landlords also, who desire to be paid for their provision of housing to the tenants. So this is a temporary provision that's already in the bill. By its own terms, it expires once the Emergency Rental Assistance Program eligibility expires, which is 4 months after it begins. And I'm actually having an amendment drafted to clarify in the landlord's notice to the tenant that there is the new 30-day extension, a notice provision for the duration of this program, but that after the program expires, it reverts back to the current statutory 14 days. For that reason, I think these circumstances warrant this special 30-day notice provision, and I ask members to vote no on the Lucero amendment.
Any other discussion on the 842 Lucero amendment? Senator Lucero, you'll be the last voice we hear, and then we'll vote.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, one of the things that we hear over and over and over again is fairness. And we just heard the Democrats assert it would not be fair if this provision were to be deleted from the bill. Well, Mr. President, let me translate that. Democrats' definition of fairness is using other people's money and putting other people at risk and making it harder for law-abiding citizens and business owners. It is fair to remove this because the costs associated with being a housing provider are not suspended, they're not delayed, they continue on. That is fair. It is fair to remove this so that the bills can be paid and not passed on to everybody else who is paying their rent, because that's the result of the language in the bill. Vote green. Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on the A42 Lucero amendment. Members, please vote. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Coran votes aye.
Senator Coran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes aye.
And Senator Heisman votes aye. Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no. Members,
Mr. President, request absentees.
Members, this is a perfect time for a gentle reminder that you all should stay near the floor, because when you're off the floor and you don't come in right away, you hold up the entire body. So please be here. All right, all senators having voted who desires a vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 32 ayes and 35 noes, the A42 Lucero Amendment is not adopted. Senator Housley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the A47 amendment.
Senator Housley offers the A47 amendment. The secretary will report the A47 Housley amendment.
Senator Housley moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 4, after line 30, insert. This is the A47 amendment.
Senator Housley, to your A47 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. What this amendment does is a household that includes a person who has been charged with or convicted of a crime under state or federal law relating to defrauding a government program or theft of public funds is ineligible for emergency rental assistance under this section. Mr. President, this is common sense. If you've already defrauded the government once, why should we trust you with any more public funds? So simple. I ask for a roll call and a green vote. Thank you.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Members, we're on the A47 Housley amendment. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'm going to ask for a no vote on this because this eliminates an entire household. If one member has been convicted and is even possibly in jail, the rest of the household, who could have nothing to do with that conviction, would still be affected. So if there's a mother with children who's trying to provide for her family, that household would be ineligible because of that. Many cases that are prosecuted, like one of the ongoing costs of being convicted is ineligibility to future programs. But this broadly swipes wives, children, mothers out of ability to get needed aid. So I ask for a no vote, Mr. President.
Senator Klein.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I don't have a question for the author of the amendment, but I do have an observation on it. The A47 eliminates eligibility for these funds even if you have simply been charged or a family member or household member has been charged with fraud. As we know in America, you are innocent until proven guilty. So this is really creating punishment without jurisdiction or judgment, and I urge a vote, no vote.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to reiterate a little bit of what Senator Port said and what Senator Klein said, this would eliminate an entire household from being able to maintain and save their housing. If someone who's associated with that household has been charged with a crime or even convicted of a crime, Mr. President and members, I think this is a cruel provision. I think we should just take a breath and take a beat and look at what this says. A household that includes a person who has been charged with or convicted of a crime. Members, there are children who will be turned out of their housing, children who will be turned out of their housing because of something an adult did or was accused of doing, and they would lose their housing. I would actually ask Senator Housley to withdraw this amendment because to contemplate it is more than I can even think about here on the floor, that we would actually deny children or significant others or spouses their housing based on someone being accused of a crime. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion on the Housley 847 amendment? Seeing none, a roll call was requested, a roll call granted. The secretary will take the roll on the A47 Housley amendment. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no.
Senator Mohammed votes no. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye. Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes aye.
And Senator Heisman votes aye. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 33 ayes and 34 nays, the A47 Housley amendment is not adopted. Senator Latz is not here. Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to offer the A25 amendment.
Senator Liskey offers the A25 amendment. The secretary will report the A25 Liskey amendment.
Senator Liskey moves to amend Senate File number 3596 as follows. Page 4, after line 30, insert. This is the A25 amendment.
Senator Liskey to your A25 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, my amendment is relatively short and sweet, so I will explain it, and we will see how this votes go. I'm looking to make the people on the registered predatory offender list ineligible for this amendment, or ineligible for this funding, and the emergency rental assistance. It's not too hard to explain why. I don't believe that we need those individuals to benefit from a handout, and I look forward to a green vote.
Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, again, this punishes a household and its children for the actions of an adult. I ask for a no vote, and just vote red, please.
Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Wiesenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. We should be voting green on this. It sounds like the Democrats just said that they want to make sure we're giving money to predatory offenders and to keep those children in a house with a predatory offender. This would stop that from happening. So if children are in a house with a predatory offender or someone sexually abusing children, I just heard that we should keep those kids in those houses with them. We shouldn't do that, actually. We should actually find somewhere else for those children to be. Vote green on this amendment. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the A25 amendment? Senator Aaron Mary Quaid.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would echo the calls from my colleagues that we don't want to punish children for the actions of adults. And I think if some of my colleagues are concerned about predators against children, they have a president they can turn to.
Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, just want a reminder that we're offering to give handouts to predatory offenders. That is what I'm hearing being argued across the aisle. I don't believe that this is necessary. we need to vote green on my amendment. Thank you.
Roll call was requested and the roll call was granted. The secretary will take the roll on the A25 Liskey amendment. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Carlson votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no.
And Senator Mohammed votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Abler votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Curran votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes aye.
And Senator Heinzman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There have been 33 ayes and 34 nays. The A25 amendment is not adopted. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to offer the A41 amendment.
Senator Rasmussen offers the A41 amendment. The secretary will report the A41 amendment.
Senator Rasmussen moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 1, delete Section 1 and insert. This is the A41 amendment.
Senator Rasmussen, to your A41 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd also request a roll call.
Roll call requested and a roll call granted. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. There is an emergency going on in Minnesota when it comes to rural emergency medical services. This amendment would redirect the funding in this bill to the Emergency Ambulance Aid Program that passed this body unanimously in 2024. I would ask for member support.
Any other discussion on the A41 amendment? Senator Klein.
Apologies, Mr. President, a bit rusty at this, but I rise to a point of order under our rules 35.2 germaneness. A germane amendment, a non-germane amendment includes one that is intended to accomplish a substantially different purpose than that of the original bill to which it is proposed. I think we can agree that this does that.
On the issue of the point raised by Senator Klein, on the issue of germaneness, to that point, Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. Advice. If you look at Mason's section 402, it says that an amendment, to be germane, an amendment is required only to relate to the same subject. It can entirely change the effect or be in conflict with the spirit of the original motion or proposal and still be germane to the subject. This is about emergency aid going through the Department of Revenue. The amendment here would simply redirect it to a different use. If you look at the title of the bill, it very clearly talks about this regarding the Department of Revenue. I think it is germane, and we should be able to vote on the amendment.
After hearing all arguments, I'll find the point of order well taken. It is not germane.
Mr. President?
Senator Rasmussen.
I appeal the ruling of the President and request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. A green vote would be for you to agree with the President. A red vote, you disagree with the President. Members, the Secretary will take the roll on the appeal. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes no.
And Senator Heisman votes no. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 34 ayes and 33 nays. The decision of the President is upheld. Senator Jaskowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we have before us a bill that is before us supposedly because of an attempt at a self-inflicted crisis here in Minnesota that Democrats tried to inflict upon the state, especially in the biggest cities of our state over the last few months, directing chaos in our largest cities in our state, directing people through signal chat groups to go out and interfere with law enforcement, creating chaos, confusion, and fear in people by our governor and our attorney general and the mayor of Minneapolis. That's what we have before us. That's the reason that has been stated for this particular bill. Mr. President, this is a fake crisis that we have before us, and instead of wasting this money on a fake crisis that is not needed, instead I bring the A45 amendment, Mr. President.
Senator Jaskowski offers the A45 amendment. The Secretary will report the A45 amendment.
Senator Drazkowski moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 1, delete Section 1 and insert. This is the A45 amendment. Senator
Jaskowski to your A45.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, instead of taking this $40 million of taxpayer money from the hardworking taxpayers in Minnesota that work hard every day to pay the huge amount of taxes that taxpayers pay to this state, instead having it redirected to people that either don't work or refused to work in the last several months. Instead of that, this is the solution, Mr. President. This takes the $40 million of taxpayer money and gives it back to the taxpayers, both to those who rent and to those who own their house, in the form of the renter's credit and the form of the property tax refund, and sends it directly in the form of property tax relief to the hardworking taxpayers of the state of Minnesota, and puts it in a place, Mr. President, that is not a fake crisis like the underlying beliefs that bring this bill forward before us today. Mr. President, I ask for a roll call and encourage members' support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Excuse me.
Senator,
hold on one moment. A roll call has been requested. A roll call granted. Senator Rest.
Mr. President, a point of order and germaneness, please.
Speak to your point of order.
35-2, a non-germane amendment, includes one that relates to a substantially different subject. We are talking about, this bill talks about rental assistance in a time of urgency. Senator Drazkowski's amendment is talking about a one-time increase in the renter's credit and in homestead credit refund. That's really far afield from the urgency that we're facing in Minnesota right now. I ask you to uphold my point of order. Thank you, sir.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I urge you to find the challenge not in order. Not only, as Senator Rasmussen had quoted in Mason's 402, but I think we have to remember the source of these funds. The source of these funds was from failure to pay property taxes. These were forfeited homes that then were sold, and those excess monies were not given back to the owners. The entire source of this funding that Senator Port is using ties back to property taxes, and therefore reutilizing those funds to help property taxpayers is germane and should be allowed to stand.
Any additional advice to the president? Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. The underlying bill seeks to provide rental assistance that will go to the housing providers that in turn will be used to pay the property taxes. The Drazkowski amendment is very much germane because it's cutting out the middleman. It's cutting out and going straight to the property owners themselves so that they have reduced property tax expenses. Therefore, Mr. President, my advice is to find the rest, point of order, not well taken.
Advice, Mr. President.
Advice, Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'll just offer one additional piece of advice. In the Drazkowski amendment, there is very clearly aid for renters. There's a renter's credit refund. So Senator Drazkowski has simply found an alternative mechanism to get relief to renters as a part of this amendment. It is germane. It's relating to taxation. I ask you find the point of order not well taken.
Senator Latz, advice.
Advice to the President, the underlying bill addresses an immediate need of the renters and frankly the landlords as well. The amendment for the renter's credit refund wouldn't have any impact until at least after January 1st of 2027 when the 2026 taxes would be due and the renter's credit would be in effect. The homestead credit refund going to property owners would not have any direct benefit whatsoever to the tenants that are facing emergency needs right now.
Last piece of advice will come from Senator Drazkowski, and then I'll give my ruling. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment also addresses, Mr. President, an immediate need. And that immediate need is the overtaxation that is happening throughout our counties and cities in this state. The property tax levels have gone up dramatically, and property tax owners, renters, and owners of properties both are having a difficult time paying the huge property taxes that are a result of what this legislature has done to them. So this is providing the immediate relief because of the mistakes of this legislature, the wrong direction this legislature has taken in pushing those burdens onto the hardworking taxpayers of our state over the last 3 years. I encourage you to find the point of order not well taken.
After listening to advice, reading our rules as well as Mason, I find the point of order is well taken. Senator Drazkowski.
Mr. President, I move to appeal the decision of the President. Ask for roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Members, remember a green vote upholds the decision of the President and the red vote goes against the ruling of the President. The Secretary will take the roll. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes no.
And Senator Heisman votes no. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 34 ayes and 32 nays, the decision of the President is upheld. Senator Grutenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, you know, I just think when I take a look at this bill, not only is it ripe for fraud, I just think it's got the wrong emphasis on the $40 million. And so, you know, what we really should be doing is redirecting the $40 million into an account that rewards whistleblowers for fraud convictions. That way they would get a 0.5% of the money that's recovered. We have a major fraud problem in this state. It's probably one of the worst in the nation. Estimates run from $9 billion up to $19 billion of fraud. And a lot of it seemed to explode under Governor Walz's administration in 2018. That's where we see an explosion of autism centers, unlicensed in many cases, and also the non-emergency transportation, daycare centers in the same building with no children. I could go on and on. So we really need to get to the bottom of the fraud, because if we do solve that area, guess what? We will have the money to do the things that we want to do to help the people that are truly in need. So with that, Mr. President, I'd like to offer the A33 amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen offers the A33 amendment. The Secretary will report the A33 amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen moves to amend Senate File number 3596 as follows. Page 1, delete Section 1 and insert. This is the A33 amendment.
Senator Gruenhagen to your A33 amendment.
Okay, with a nation-leading fraud problem in Minnesota, it's important we encourage whistleblowers to come forward to stop it. We've heard too often that employees at the Department of Human Services faced retribution and persecution for raising concerns. Way back, starting in 2018, by the leadership of the DHS department. So we're actually persecuting employees, up to 450 of them, that tried to raise a red flag for fraud. And this change that I have in this amendment would reward them for protecting tax dollars instead of punishing them. Keep in mind, members, these employees are our first line of defense. They're the ones that see the checks going out and who they go to. One other thing that I want to give an example of why this bill is misdirecting the $40 million. You know, members, one of the things you have to understand, it's government regulations and taxation and that has driven up the cost and created shortages in housing and rental. And when you have a shortage, you drive up the cost. And I'll give you just one example. You know, if you build a medium home in Minnesota compared to the 5 states around us, it's over $100,000 more in North Dakota, South Dakota, compared to North Dakota, South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin, or Illinois. The median price in the U.S. to build the average home is $414,000. In Minnesota, we have artificially inflated it to $569,000. Think of that, members. We've done the same thing with rental. You know, I'm on the housing committee. Everything that the agency is trying to correct is getting worse. Evictions are up. Housing rental units are down. Residential home building is down. So when we look at the problems that are caused with the types of rental assistance we're trying to do here, I have a recommendation for those of you who support this. Look in the mirror. You'll see the culprit. It's the state government that is ruining the rental and housing business in the state of Minnesota. It's creating shortages with Green New Scam regulations on construction and a host of other false regulations and taxes. So what this amendment does, instead of addressing...
Point of order.
Oh.
For what purpose do you rise, Senator Klein?
Mr. President, I rise under our rules 35.2 to raise a point of order.
So you have to wait until the speaker's done, okay? And I believe that he was wrapping up so that we can go to the next thing. Senator Gruenhagen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Okay, so what you're doing with this bill in its current state, not only is it open for fraud, it's like putting a Band-Aid on an economic infection. And the infection is the taxes, regulations, and rules that the state government comes up with. You're creating the problem, then you feel bad about it, and then you come up with $40 million one time, which is going to run out, and to try to solve it. Think of that, members. Let's do what's right. Let's lower the cost of rentals and construction, and let's reward the fraudsters, the people the whistleblowers who come forward to report fraud, so that we can actually save the money and have the money to meet the people who really need it.
Senator Klein.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise under 35.2 germaneness. The original bill creates appropriations to local governments. The A33 creates appropriations, $40 million, to any person around the world from any country who declares themselves to be a whistleblower. I think we can agree that accomplishes a substantially different purpose than the original bill.
Members, no advice is needed. The point of order is well taken. Senator Latz.
Mr. President,
Senator Rasmussen.
I appeal the ruling of the President and request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. The Secretary will take the roll. Members, please vote. Senator Broden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes no.
And Senator Heisman votes no. All members having voted who desires a vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 33 ayes and 34 nays, the decision of the President is upheld. Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I rise to a parliamentary inquiry.
Hold on. I just want to make sure I got the vote right. There being 33 ayes and 33 nays, the decision of the President is not upheld. Excuse me, 34 nays. The decision of the President is not upheld. We were on the appeal.
Thank you. Mr. President? Yeah, I know.
Just for clarity, the President's ruling was not sustained, so we're now back on the underlying amendment.
And Mr. President, I rise to a parliamentary inquiry.
Senator Westrom, I was identifying Senator Latz, but for what purpose do you rise?
Are you asking me?
Senator Westrom.
Oh, Mr. President, I rise to a parliamentary inquiry. Just as things get moving, the last appeal, you didn't ask for any debate, and I just wanted to make sure that appealing the ruling of the chair should be a debatable motion. Is that correct?
Just for clarity, when there is debate only for the appeal, but I do not have to accept advice. So if we're looking at the underlying issue, somebody raises a point of order, that is the ruling. That's my understanding. All right, now we're going to Senator Latz. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Gruenhagen.
Yeah, I just encourage members to vote green. Okay, thank you.
Mr. President, roll call.
Hold on.
Find another reason to run.
Mr. President,
Calling on Senator Champion.
I was on the prevailing side. I would like to bring forth a motion to reconsider.
Senator Champion moves to reconsider the previous vote. Discussion to the motion. Senator Champion, do you want to speak to that motion?
No, thank you.
Senator Klein.
Mr. President, I request a roll call.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Further discussion to the Champion motion to reconsider. Seeing none, the Secretary will take the roll.
Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Abler votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes no.
And Senator Heisman votes no. All members having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 43 ayes and 23 nays. The motion to reconsider is passed. Members, we are now back to the underlying vote, and we've heard debate. Anything else? Seeing nothing else, a roll call was requested before. I want to make sure that we go back there. Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the motion as to whether or not to support the appeal, I am requesting a roll call.
Members, we're now on the appeal of the decision of the President. The Secretary will take the roll. Members, before I go to those who are going to vote pursuant to Rule 40.7, the board is a little off, so I'm going to instruct the secretary to vote champion aye. And now I need to ask Senator Friends, how do you vote, Senator Friends? Because there was the change. That's why you got to follow along with us.
Thank you, Senator President Champion. I did want to support the ruling of the president with my vote. That's a yes vote.
Aye. All right. Now, Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Karan votes no.
Senator Karan votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Heinzman votes no.
And Senator Heisman votes no. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 34 ayes and 33 nays, the decision of the president is upheld. Senator Latz.
Mr. President, I've been waiting a long time to offer this amendment here. This is the A76 amendment that addresses the notice provision relating to the eviction timeline being extended to 30 days.
Senator Lance offers the A76 amendment. The secretary will report the A76 amendment. And Senator Lance, just so you know, we called on you earlier, but you were not here.
Oh, I understand.
The secretary will report the A76 amendment.
Senator Latz moves to amend Senate File Number 3596 as follows. Page 5, line 15, before paragraph insert. This is the A76 amendment.
Now you may explain it, Senator Latz, the A76.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was not criticizing when I was being called on. It's just that the last germaneness proceeding took a lot longer than we anticipated. So I was ready to go and waiting patiently. Mr. President and members, as we've already noted, there's a provision in the bill to extend the eviction notice timeline from 14 days to 30 days solely for the duration of the emergency assistance program, which is 4 months. What we don't have yet in the bill is a correction to the notice that is given, the actual written notice that is given by the landlord to the tenant with regard to that eviction notice. So the amendment here makes clear that the landlord, when they give the statement to the tenant, that they have a 30-day notice from the date notice is given to provide the rent that is required under their lease, and also clarifies that that 30-day provision expires when the program ends, so that tenants do not come under the misunderstanding that it is a permanent 30-day change. Rather, they are informed that after the emergency provision in the underlying bill here expires, the notice provision reverts back to current statute, which is 14 days. This will alleviate any confusion that might otherwise arise. So it's to the benefit of all the parties involved in this proceeding that they have clarity on the duration of that notice provision. I ask for your support. And I request a roll call vote.
Roll call requested, roll call granted. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Thank you, Senator Latz, for bringing this. It just adds that clarification to the notice, as well as changing the law for these 4 months. I encourage a yes vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other discussion on the A76 amendment? Senator Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I just urge members to oppose this. The thing is, again, we're treating symptoms, and it's taxation, regulations, and government that is causing shortages. And what you're doing to people who would build rental housing and ultimately bring down the cost, you're convoluting things for them and actually contributing to the problem. So members, we need to address where the economic infection is, rather than just put Band-Aids on and convolute things. Government is the problem. It doesn't solve the problems. People would build additional rental, bring the price of rent down if it wasn't for government in so many different areas. And I don't think this amendment will help. It'll discourage landlords from building additional rental. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Klein.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request a roll call.
Roll call requested. Roll call has been granted. Any other discussion before we go to Senator Latz? We're going to Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Wondering if Senator Latz would yield for a question.
Senator Latz, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Latz. On line 1.7, it says, some local governments may have an eviction notice period longer than 30 days. I am just wondering, Mr. President and Senator Latz, can you name some of those communities?
Senator Latz, to the question from Senator Lucero.
Mr. President, Senator Lucero, I personally do not know of any that have longer than 30 days. I know some have set them at 30 days, which is allowed under current law to do, but I don't know of any specific local governments. I just wanted to make sure that in the notice provision that is given to the tenants, that the tenants understand what the law is with regard to their situation. So the amendment deals only with notice. I don't know specifically of any, but I didn't want to undermine those local provisions and give any misunderstanding to tenants if there was a local provision that was longer than 30 days.
Senator Lucero, any additional questions? Seeing no additional questions, Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just rise and appreciate the amendment, Mr. President. I don't think we need to go to 30 days, but I appreciate the clarification in the amendment, so I am going to support the amendment just for clarification's sake. Thank you.
All right, any other discussions before the last voice we hear will be that of Senator Latz, who is the author of the A76. Senator Latz.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. Regardless of your views on the underlying bill here, this amendment is simply a notice provision so that tenants are clear as to what the law is for the purpose of this emergency assistance fund. I would hope that we can all agree that it's important for everyone involved to have clarity on that and to support this notice provision. Thank you.
The Secretary will take the roll on the A76 Latz amendment. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
Senator Mohammed votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye.
And Senator Marty votes aye. Senator Jasinski. Oh, all right. He needs another minute. Sorry about that, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Coleman votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Miller votes aye.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Corran votes no.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Weber votes aye.
Senator Heisman votes aye.
And Senator Heisman votes aye. All members having voted who desires to vote, the secretary will close the roll. There being 57 ayes and 10 noes, the A76 Latz Amendment is adopted. Any other amendments? The secretary will give the bill its third reading.
Senate File Number 3596, a bill for an act relating to taxation, aids to local governments, establishing a one-time emergency rental assistance aid for counties and tribal governments.
Third reading, Senator Fateh.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and I want to thank Senator Port for bringing forward this legislation and allowing me to sign on second, being the senator from Minneapolis that has been hit especially hard by Operation Metro Surge and been seeing neighbors really struggling. And I want to just speak to members about why this is necessary and what we've been seeing. We have experienced the largest ICE operations with Operation Metro Surge in our nation's history. We had $170 billion plus invested. We saw 3,000 plus agents deployed upon our communities to terrorize our communities. We've seen neighbors that were afraid to go to work, afraid to leave their homes. We've seen agents targeting our neighbors based off of what they look like. And we just saw an article this morning from WCCO that showed that at least there's 23 instances of racial profiling by ICE agents. I want to talk a little bit about what's been happening in Minneapolis especially, being the city that's been hit especially hard. What I've seen is that in this time also, neighbors got together, they formed communication chains, they formed rapid response groups, they've been providing mutual aid, raising millions of dollars, providing assistance for rent, for food, going shopping for elders, for the elderly immigrants. We've seen folks really rallying together. I feel like right now we've seen in Minneapolis more people than not walking around with a whistle, blowing the whistle whenever they're seeing ICE agents in the community, whenever they want to alert their neighbors as to what is happening. And a lot of the times, myself being the senator for the District 62 South Minneapolis, I've heard from residents first about what's been happening on the ground. And I represent a district that has been hit especially hard. Both the murders of Alex Preddy and Renee Good occurred in District 62. So it's very clear that not only our immigrant community has been impacted, but our allies also has been targeted. And we've seen 2 United States citizens that have gotten murdered. We've seen the president speak out of both sides of his mouth as to why this was necessary, targeting criminals, saying that we want to target fraud, also saying that we don't want the Somali community here. We've seen him call our Congresswoman Ilhan Omar garbage. And so we know what it really is. If he really wanted to crack down on fraud, he wouldn't have paved the way for multiple prosecutors to leave that have been prosecuting fraud because they were fed up with the incompetence of the federal administration. If he was really worried about fraud, we wouldn't have seen him pardon multiple fraudsters that have been convicted. Folks like Devin Archer, who was convicted of $60 million in a bond fraud scheme. Todd
Point of order.
Chrisley, that was. For what purpose do you rise? Only state the point of order.
Mr. President, what is the subject that we're discussing at the current time? It seems like the speaker that's addressing the Senate is going far afield on public federal policies. I believe this subject is on housing in the state of Minnesota and trying to get emergency relief for individuals that are renters.
Members, just so that we know that under our point of parliamentary inquiry, you can look at Mason's sections 250 to 253, that members cannot interrupt another member who has the floor to raise a parliamentary inquiry unless it is for a specific reason under our rules. I'll come back to you later, Senator Limmer. I now have to give back the floor to Senator Fateh. Members, remember, we're on final passage as amended, Senate file number 3596. If we could keep our comments to that bill, that would be most appreciated. Senator Fateh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand that the facts might be uncomfortable for some, but this is a direct result of the policies from the federal government that has been impacting and harming our communities. So I'll continue with the last person I want to mention that Trump has pardoned, and that is Trevor Milton, who was convicted of securities and wires fraud with $676 million.
Point of order.
For what purpose do you rise? Concisely.
Under Rule 36.2, relating to the topic of debate, we are stretching well past the debate of this subject, and I look forward to a rule in my favor. Thank you.
Under the rules, we are not supposed to interrupt for those particular reasons. That's why I cited the rules of parliamentary procedure earlier today. Members, I also want us to know that we need to stay on topic because we want to make sure our debate is on topic according to the rules.
Mr. President, I'll move on to Minneapolis. I'll move on to the topic that impacts Minneapolis. Thank you, Senator, my good friend, Senator Lissy. Thank you. And so there was a preliminary report that came out of Minneapolis that showed that there are at least 76,000 in need for rental assistance, and I think that's a conservative figure. We've seen a monthly estimate of $47 million in lost wages, close to $16 million in monthly needs for rental assistance, and nearly $10 million needed in food assistance. We've seen restaurants that have been losing on average $10,000 weekly, which amounted to $15 million weekly in lost. Grocery stores and convenience stores losing $1 million weekly. And that includes in my district folks like on the Lake Street corridor, which are largely BIPOC businesses. And so if we can't have people that are able to have their businesses function, folks that are afraid to go to work, we've seen, and I've heard from members of the immigrant community saying that, well, I have rent to pay, but I can't go to work. I've been targeted. I've already had an experience with ICE. Then what is the solution here? If we cannot provide the basic help that we've seen community members that have already been providing for our communities, what else is the solution? The only alternative is for people to be thrown out into the street, to lose their homes. And I don't think any of our localities or our counties are ready to absorb those costs. So I'll cut my remarks short, and I please urge members to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate it. As we consider this bill, what's interesting to me is when it comes to the $40 million, we're looking to take or divert that $40 million from a very specific fund. And so as I was researching the bill and preparing to have some conversation about it, ask questions about it, one of the first questions I asked is, well, why does this fund even exist in the first place? Why is there a fund of over $100 million in existence that we're looking to take $40 million from? Well, it has to do with something called the Tyler settlement. And how or why did that even come about? Well, the Tyler settlement came about because the government took more from people than it should have because it thought it knew better. It was so eager for more of the people's money that it unlawfully stole tens of millions of dollars from them. So bad and so much so that the courts had to step in, rule in favor of the people, and demand that they be made whole. The legislature set aside money to do so. And as I familiarized myself with that case and the money that was set aside to make people whole because the government took more from them than it should have, it reminded me of where things stand today. And I'm left asking if the legislature, if the state government here in Minnesota has learned any lessons. A $19 billion surplus gone, $10 billion more in taxes, growing a budget by $20 billion or 40%, billions of dollars in fraud, and a $6 billion deficit. And here we stand as a legislature trying to take money set aside to make people whole who the government already stole from and divert it to a wholly new purpose that, quite frankly, might not be right for fraud itself. So unfortunately, Mr. President, I don't think we have learned many lessons. We certainly haven't learned the lessons that Minnesotans are demanding that we finally address when it comes to fraud and rampant spending and overtaxation in the state of Minnesota. What's interesting too, Mr. President, is there are no shortage of critical issues here in the state of Minnesota that could definitely use a $40 million investment. Education comes to mind first and foremost. So I'm left wondering, what is the difference between all the other issues that Minnesotans would love us to see address with a $40 million investment and this issue? Well, the difference, Mr. President, is this. None of those issues, no matter how critical they may be, have been deemed politically advantageous to make headlines with. And that's the unfortunate reality, Mr. President. The people of Minnesota are tired of their hard-earned dollars being spent in ways in which are not a priority for the state, for them, for their families. They're tired of seeing billions of their hard-earned tax dollars go toward fraud. And here we are doing more of the same potentially. If we don't learn these lessons very quickly, Mr. President, the harm that has been caused will certainly be unfixable. And so I ask members, as we continue this session, and you're prioritizing bills and spending and investments in the state, ask first, what's most important to the people of Minnesota? What are we doing to fix the issues that we have? And how are we working every single day to make sure they keep more of their hard-earned money versus the government continuing to take more of it? Thank you.
Senator Kunesh.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to support this bill and to ensure that these funds that were ill-begotten by the state in order to now have a balance that can go towards doing good. I think it's important to recognize that the work that we are doing here today is work that we have done in the past. We have stepped up at different times to address emergencies and issues that affect unique groups of people here in Minnesota. They talked today about ambulance service and how we were able to afford dollars to support them. We are constantly helping our farmers and agriculture when there is a shortfall. When there are natural disasters such as flooding and communities that need assistance in dealing with those kind of tragedies, Minnesota stands up. We've looked at unemployment with our miners up north when they needed assistance in making sure that they were able to pay their rent and put food on their tables, and also make sure that their children have what they need. And now we have that opportunity to do it again. I represent districts that have high levels of hurt because of ice surge. We saw in Columbia Heights and Fridley and the other communities the terrorizing that happened when we were besieged by thousands of agents in our community. And that had an effect over and over again in so many different ways. In Fridley alone, they came together to assist their communities and their neighbors especially when our children were being sieged under by ICE. But so far, since Metro Urge, just the rental assistance that our community has pooled together in one source, over $31,000 and $8,000 in utility assistance. And that's not counting any other assistance outside, and the need is still there. In our manufactured home community, we've seen no leniency from the corporate-owned community that we have there. And so we found couples and families living in cars with no place to go because there's no place for couples. They lost their place because they weren't able to continue to pay their rent. Over 500 families in just Columbia Heights alone have had to ask for and receive mutual aid assistance. So when people want to contradict or to talk about how our communities together came together, I just want to share a couple of the stories that have been sent to me just today. We now have over 500 families in Columbia Heights that have been helped through mutual aid, GoFundMe, with partial rent. But it keeps coming. Those requests keep coming. From a Fridley resident with Heights kids, she's been traumatically pulled over by ICE vehicles multiple times in convoy style. Traumatizing events that she's experienced. She's been the person who has collected keys from abandoned cars from detained individuals. She has trauma response, unable to go to work. Her spouse is afraid to leave the house. They've gone from being small business owners and full-time workers to neither working for the past 2 months. This kind of mutual aid, this kind of aid that we can provide here today is going to make all the difference in my community. Because of no ill-begotten efforts from my community, we are suffering at the highest levels. And so today I ask for your support in passing this rental assistance and making the best effort to make some of these people whole. Thank you.
Senator Liskey.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise in opposition to this bill for a couple of reasons. One, Senator Duckworth pointed out where this money is coming from and what it was supposed to be used for, and we're now changing the purpose of that money, which isn't okay. The hard taxpayers of Minnesota are seeing this, and there's a lot of strain and struggle going through our state. It's not just for one reason, it's not just for one operation, it's not just for one thing. There are a lot of things that we've made decisions on here in the state of Minnesota that have led to our taxpayers struggling. And what's even worse is we had an opportunity as a group to vote to remove access to these benefits from predatory offenders, and yet we watched the body vote against that. We had the opportunity to vote to protect taxpayers from funding things that we probably shouldn't fund in the first place, and yet we voted against it because of partisan politics or things of disagreement, thinking that it would not get to the people it shouldn't get to. Well, imagine that. Here in Minnesota, we've heard about fraud, and yet again, we are proposing a type of program that could be rampant with fraud. There's not a lot of requirements to prove that you benefit or should get this money. And so with that, I urge a no vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Mr. President. Body, I ask you and urge you to vote yes on this. We've seen all winter neighbors helping neighbors. Neighbors standing up and doing, well, what needed to be done to make sure that neighbors were able to stay in their homes, to be safe in the streets. And that's what we're doing today. We're taking the next step. We're joining folks like Tom and Kathy. We're joining folks like Saeed, who stepped up and said, I will make sure that my neighbor can pay their rent. And today it's time for the Minnesota Senate to say, well, we can put some of our money in here as well, to put in the hard-earned tax dollars to keep folks in their homes. That's what Minnesotans do. That's what neighbors do. That's what we do to make sure that we stick up and say that this is the North Star state. So I urge a yes vote on this bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Weissenberg. Senator Weissenberg.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in opposition to this bill. I heard, we're giving free housing because people are afraid to leave their houses and go to work. I think there's a bigger thing here. We've got 8.6 billion people in the world, and Minnesotans think we should bring them all here, and we should pay for them to be here so we can buy their votes. Senator Chuck Schumer just said verbatim, the Save America Act, it allows ICE to kick tens of millions of people off the voter rolls. These people aren't American citizens, Mr. President. They're illegal citizens. So I rise to oppose this Rent for Riots bill. At least that's what I call it up in my district. If you read the title of this bill, it sounds very compassionate, emergency rental assistance. But I sat in my hotel room last night watching the discussions of this bill as I went through committees, and I tell you this is opposite of compassionate, at least for the hardworking people of my district, Mr. President, who would be forced to pay for it. Because when you create a giant pot of taxpayer money to pay people's rent with loose definitions and very little accountability, you're sending a signal across the state. Don't worry about the consequences. Someone else will pick up the tab. And guess who that someone else is? Mr. President, it's the auto mechanic in Brainerd. It's the truck driver from Aiken. It's the bar owner in Little Falls who's just trying to keep the lights on after his business was devastated by Tim Walz's reckless COVID policies. Mr. President, hardworking Minnesotans who pay their bills every month are now expected to pay for the rent of folks who don't. Every one of us here has compassion for people who fall in hard times. But compassion does not mean writing a blank check from the taxpayers of Minnesota. And it certainly doesn't mean rewarding chaos. Over the last few years, we've seen what happens when lawlessness takes over, when riots break out, when businesses burn, when neighborhoods are torn apart. The people who suffer the most aren't politicians, Mr. President. It's the shop owners, it's the workers, the families who built something with their bare hands. Yet here we are debating a bill that effectively says if things go sideways, the taxpayers will cover the rent anyway. That's why my constituents back home have started calling this the Rents for Riots bill. Because the government keeps bailing out bad behavior, and when they do that, you only invite more of it. And let's talk about another issue that nobody on the other side seems eager to mention. When you create large public benefit programs with minimal guardrails, you open the door for abuse, included by people who aren't even supposed to be here in the first place. Now, my own ancestors came to Minnesota from Germany. Minnesotans believe in legal immigration, and we always have. Boy, we also believe in something much more simple and fair, Mr. President. Public benefits funded by American taxpayers should go to American citizens and lawful residents, not to people who broke the law to enter the country. Yet time and time again, we see programs rush through this legislature with very little verification, little enforcement, and little regard for those who actually end up receiving the money. And when that happens, this bill doesn't become expensive, it becomes unjust. Because the plumber who works 60 hours a week to keep a roof over his family's head shouldn't be forced to subsidize the rent of someone who refuses to play by the same rules. Mr. President, that's not compassion. That's disrespect to every honest worker in this state. Now, I know some folks in this chamber think the answer to every problem is another appropriation, another program, another check written from somebody else's wallet. But where I come from, we think a little bit different, Mr. President. We believe in responsibility. You work, you pay your bills, you respect the law. And if your neighbor falls in hard times, you lend a hand. You, not the government bureaucracy. That's the Minnesota I grew up in, and it's worth defending. So today we say clearly and plainly, we will not turn taxpayers of this state into an unlimited ATM machine. We will not reward lawlessness. On February 19th, Senator Lucero offered an amendment to this bill to prioritize people who are here legally over illegal aliens. The amendment failed after Senator Putnam said that prioritizing people with lawful status means we will also then prioritize the eviction of those without lawful status. That's exactly what that says, Mr. President. You should be here legally. When I was working 3 jobs to pay my way through college, I tended a bar several days a week in St. Cloud. At last call, they used to play a song called Closing Time by the band Semisonic.
And I think that one of the lyrics from that song would be very appropriate for those illegal aliens in Minnesota who have not been paying their rent. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Mr. President, I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Bowden.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I want to thank Senator Port for her work on this bill. It is timely, it is needed. Minnesotans are counting on us. There are folks in every one of our districts all across the state who are struggling. And neighbors have been stepping up to help neighbors, as we do. As Minnesotans, we help each other, we look out for each other, we protect each other. And that has been happening across the state as well. And it is now time for us to do that also, to stand up for our neighbors, to support our neighbors. We are in a housing crisis. We are in an affordability crisis. We have information from the Twin Cities of the United Way. They have reported just since January a 60% increase in calls for housing assistance. And in just 1 week, they had over 6,000 calls. We heard on this floor earlier from one of my colleagues that it's a fake crisis, and I find that frankly offensive. It does not feel fake to the families who are having to make decisions about, am I going to pay my rent or am I going to buy my groceries? It doesn't feel fake to the families who are deciding if they are going to access health care or buy groceries. We are in an affordability crisis where people are getting kicked off their food benefits, so they are not able to afford the very rising cost of groceries. They are losing their health care coverage, so they are making decisions about, am I going to be able to take my kids to the doctor or not? So it doesn't feel fake to these families in all of our districts who are making these very difficult choices. And I want to share just 2 stories. One is a gentleman in my district who is a U.S. citizen, was detained by ICE. He, because of the color of his skin, was worried about that, so was carrying his passport and his identification on him. They took that from him, assaulted him, took his phone and broke it, and did not give him his documentation back. Because of all of that, he was not able to work for a bit, he lost his job, and has not been able to find another one yet. He has a wife and small kids, and is looking at how is he going to pay his rent as he has not been able to work. I had a mother in my office yesterday talking about how she has been living in her car with her kids for months. These are real families in all of our districts. And so I find it shocking, honestly, that there's such a debate on if this is the right thing for us to be doing. It is absolutely the right thing for us to be doing, and I'm very proud to vote green.
Senator Draheim.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I handed out a sheet from Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. Kind of looks like this. And no, this is not a prop. It is data. And in housing, we track a lot of data. There's data everywhere. On the home side, we track days on market. How long has a house been on the market? How many houses are available? How many sales there are? On the rental side, we track vacancies and when rent is collected, what percentage of rent is collected. And this sheet kind of goes through the best data in the state of Minnesota that we have. And I just want to bring attention to the first table on that. It shows the rent collected in this year. And it shows 91.6 for January, 91.6 for February, 91.5 for March. And then we go to the second table, it compares 25 to 26. And in 25, you had 95.7, 95.9, 96.3, and then you go for 2026 in a smaller sample, 95.8, 96.3, and 96.3. Relatively flat members. So when we look at the largest organization across the state, and this sample includes Minneapolis, St. Paul, Rochester, and St. Cloud. So the major MSAs, Mr. President, the major MSAs across the state. And the numbers haven't changed from this year to last year. The data shows we are not in a crisis. Now, I'm not going to stand up here and say some people weren't affected. We know that some people were affected. But I think part of being a legislator is governing, and part of governing is prioritizing. And this is the third time I've heard this bill, Mr. President. I heard it in housing, I heard it in finance, and I know you're on finance too, Mr. President. And one of your colleagues on your side of the aisle brought up the same thing that I heard from my 7 counties. This is not a priority for them. And we just met with our counties. This is not a priority for our counties. So remember, we're taking money that was collected illegally, according to the courts. We paid out what we were supposed to pay out. We're taking the excess, and we're giving it to the counties to help people who allegedly were affected by this across the state and our tribal nations. But I have 7 counties, not one of them brought this problem to me. And our colleague, Mr. President, brought up his counties were not affected. And I know Senator Jasinski told me the same thing, that his county, this is not a priority. Now, would they like money? Yeah, they need money. We've put a lot onto our counties. We've pushed a lot down to our counties. They would love more funding. We've heard a lot today about different stories and how people were affected, and I don't disagree with those stories. But when we look at priorities, we have our #1 health care hospital about ready to close. They are hanging on by a thread. Hennepin County Medical Center. I know you know it. It's very important to the whole state. Burn unit, etc., right there. I think everybody here has probably had a loved one or someone they know that has been sent to Hennepin County at one point. But in rural Minnesota, what I hear from my counties and all my communities is they need resources for first responders to save lives. So, as much as I appreciate the work we've done today on this bill, and I do believe the bill is better today after the floor session than it was before, but when I go back to my district, it's about care. We have hospitals and clinics closing all throughout my region. We got first responders that don't have enough money to pay for new equipment that is desperately needed. And then we have Hennepin County Medical Center, the backdrop for all care across the state, about ready to close. And we're funding a program, according to the data, Mr. President, from this sheet that I handed out to every member. We are not in a crisis, according to the data. So, members, I appreciate the debate. I always appreciate the topic of housing. Everybody knows that. But this $40 million could be spent in better ways, so I urge a no vote on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Wickland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in strong support of Senate File 3596. I have seen over the past few months the great needs in the communities I represent, Richfield, Bloomington, Minneapolis, so many families whose lives have been disrupted. And this bill will allow for some of them to receive some funding to help keep them in their homes and to get back to what is a more normal life. There are businesses in my community, small businesses in my community, single owner businesses in my community, that their business has decimated over the past couple months and is still down. These are small business owners who own beauty parlors. They own spas. They have built up clients over several years and they have a successful business, but now that business is gone. And they're struggling. They're struggling to make their rent for their own business, and they're struggling to provide for their families who depend on them. As the author mentioned in her opening statement, there are also families that have been subject to the whims of our federal government. The Afghan refugees that she mentioned, that's a family in my community who, for no fault of their own, they came here seeking a better life. We were supporting the process, their legal authorization to work here, and now that has just been taken away abruptly, leaving a family with no ability to work, and yet they have to make their rent. Another example, U.S. citizens who own their own cleaning business, and they've seen their coworkers and colleagues stay away from work because they are too afraid to leave their homes. They still have to make their payments. They have to pay for their apartments. But they're seeing their kids, also citizens who pay taxes, who support businesses in their community, really struggling. And this bill will help assist in that. Another example of a family that faced incredible trauma with ICE agents coming to their apartment early in the morning, no warrant, broke in, and detained, illegally detained a mother and daughter, leaving the husband behind to decide how will he make his way now. He is the sole provider. Does he continue working? Does he work to get his family, who has been moved to Texas, detained in Texas? Does he work to get them back home again? It shouldn't be happening, but it has, and families are struggling. So I support this bill today. It will not meet every need. I'm proud of my communities for standing up and collecting large sums to go out back out to their neighbors and community members in the form of rent assistance, food assistance, rides, helping people get to work so they feel safe trying to go to work. All of that is worthwhile, but what we can do today here is also worthwhile, and that's why I am strongly supporting this bill today. Thank you.
Senator Pratt.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. We can agree we want Minnesotans to have housing, but I have several concerns over this proposal. First, this bill started off at $50 million. It jumped to $75 million. We've come back to $40 million. It feels like, and Mr. President, what's been brought up, we're seeking an amount of money that we can bypass the normal procedures for documenting how much we spend. We're taking money from people who were wronged by county governments in property tax forfeiture cases and making them whole. But no, we're taking that money back for this purpose before that program is ended. My county didn't ask for these funds. In finance, Mr. President, we heard from several members that their counties hadn't asked for these funds. The tribe in my district didn't ask for this, and I've spoken to a couple other tribes who didn't ask for this type of aid. I've not found anybody receiving these funds who has raised this as a key issue. Now, I got to say, I'm really pleased that Senator Port urged members to adopt my common sense amendment to verify eligibility and need before handing out these funds. As I've said on many occasions and the legislative auditor has backed up, attestation is not a fraud prevention tool. However, we hear example after example of people accused of defrauding the government of funds getting additional grants. Minnesotans are fed up with the same people stealing from us time after time after time, allowing people to be who are charged with defrauding the state to qualify for these funds shows Senate Democrats have not learned their lesson and have not learned from past mistakes. And Mr. President, I'm concerned with the lack of financial controls. We talked about this in finance. Typically, when a program ends, those funds are canceled back after 30 days. But yet this one seems to extend that cancel back period 3 months after the program ends. The lack of simple financial controls is one of the reasons Minnesota is such a glaring example and embarrassment when it comes to fraud. So because the bill was not requested by counties and tribes, because this amount was designed simply to bypass our normal accounting rules, because we're allowing people who have defrauded the state to qualify for these grants, and because the program lacks simple, common sense, and standard controls, I recommend a no vote. Mr. President, this bill is not ready to pass.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, members, I think there might be an important date that is missing from folks' view of what this bill does. It goes back to September 1st. This is for rental assistance and utility assistance that goes back to September 1st. And the reason why it goes back to September 1st is because the United States of America and Minnesotans have experienced for the last year and change a devastating economic siege, where Trump and Republicans, with the blessing of the Republicans in this legislature, have blessed actual theft from working class Americans to enrich the wealthiest people in the world who are in this country. Billionaires, the number of billionaires has gone up by 50%. 50%, Mr. President, in the last 8 years. All while gutting Medicaid, cutting SNAP, emergency rental assistance, emergency energy assistance, LIHEAP, rural hospital funding. We've had the net worth of billionaires go up 120%, while literally not one working family in my district can say that that's true. And then on top of that, we've seen Trump and Republicans withhold funds to counter terrorism, for children's mental health grants, the DOJ Stop Violence at School grant, the local food purchasing assistance program. It's been an economic siege, Mr. President. And then they sent the armed, masked, lawless paramilitary to terrorize our streets, kidnap our babies, and murder our citizens with impunity. And Minnesotans have responded so beautifully and so unified. They've delivered groceries, they've given rides, they've raised money for rental assistance. They have shown the rest of this world what neighbors look like and what democracy looks like. And so, Mr. President, I'm so glad we are doing this bill here today, but I have to tell you, it feels a little weird. While we have tariffs, which have been ruled illegal taxes, taking at least $1,400 from every family in this country, while we have a war that nobody can explain why we're in it, costing us $1 billion a day, $93 billion for crabs and luxury goods to decorate the Pentagon, private jets, luxury trips to Italy, all while we're trying to get $40 million out to the Minnesotans who have suffered under this absolutely cruel and unnecessary economic regime of this administration. I am so grateful that we are able to do this today, Mr. President, because the way Minnesotans have stepped up, the way Minnesotans have turned towards their neighbors to help one another and love one another, demands the government do the same. So I'm very proud to vote green for this bill. I'm so grateful to Senator Port and all of her work getting this done. It is time that the Minnesota government respond exactly like Minnesotans have and help one another. Thank you.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Members, we have before us a bill that shouldn't even be here today. It takes $40 million of the taxpayers' money, the hardworking Minnesotans that are out there working right now. They were working last month, they were working the month before that, and the months before that, they continue to work and pay their due to this state that continues to extract money from them, much for needs that they don't agree with. And they abhor that, Mr. President, and rightfully so. They should abhor this even more as they see the contents of this bill and the motivations behind this bill. Mr. President, it was the last few months that are used to create this fake narrative that we have a housing crisis, that people can't pay their rent, they don't have enough money to pay their rent. Well, it was the last few months, Mr. President, that members of this legislature, multiple members of this legislature, were involved in the signal chat groups, the paramilitary organization formed by Minnesota Democrats throughout the core cities in this state. The signal chat groups that dispatched volunteers to go out and intercede between federal law enforcement and their mission to throw people in harm's way. And because of that, we actually had 2 people in this state die. A very unfortunate thing because of this effort of the paramilitary organization that Democrats organized in this state. Mr. President, there is no need for this bill. They're saying that people don't have enough money because they couldn't work. Mr. President, Democrats were telling them not to work during the last several months. They told them in the core cities, don't work, don't send your kids to school. If they're in school, pull them out, close your business. How does that help military, or how does that help economic activity, Mr. President, within the metro area? How does it help? How does not working, the Democrats were telling them not to work, all their affiliated organizations, don't go to work this day. I can go through the list, I got it on my computer somewhere. Don't go to work this week, don't go to work this week. And if people don't go to work, how are they going to pay their rent, Mr. President? Have the Democrats asked that? No. Instead, they are stealing more money from the people who are working. The people who work every day to pay the big government that we have here. Much of it defrauded. Billions of dollars in fraud. And instead, they bring a fraudulent program, one that is fraudulent on the people of Minnesota, because you know what? The whole premise of it is fraudulent. There's no housing crisis. There's no can't pay rent crisis. Senator Draheim showed the numbers from the Minnesota Multi-Housing Association. There's actually a higher percent of residents paying their rent than there was the last 3 years. This is a fake, fraudulent crisis stemming from a self-inflicted wound, a self-inflicted economic wound coordinated by Democrats. Democrats of Minnesota, the response does not always need to be don't go to work, don't go to school, close your business. If we are going to be a strong state again and we're going to avoid more fraud like this, we got to start encouraging people to do what our forefathers did, which most of the people in this state do. Go to work, run your business, get your kids in school. Mr. President, that's what they did in my district. They went to work every single day for the last, back to September or whenever this bill goes. They worked hard every day. They didn't take the bait of Democrats to think that you cannot go to work and not have to pay the price. This bill brings forward for those that did not go to work and refused to go to work and has somebody else pay for it. Other people's money is brought forward, extracted from those hardworking people, and given to them to create a false sense that they can stop working, stop contributing, and still manage to get by because someone else comes in and takes care of it for them. If we're going to turn this state around, Mr. President, we have to stop the very behavior that's in this bill before us today. Mr. President, members, I encourage a no vote on this fraudulent underlying bill.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. Appreciate the debate. We have to face a few facts here. The bill comes out of a need. And for my brothers and sisters who are from Greater Minnesota, let's not make any mistake. This will help our communities. Greater Minnesota incomes are lower, the housing needs are greater, and this fills a need right now. I'll be a yes vote on the bill. And I don't like to get too political on the floor for my friends across the aisle, but I want to remind you what the President of the United States said when the Metro surge started. He said, this is retribution. And I'd ask you, each one of you who I like and respect, if a president from a different party said that, and then we had happen what happened here in Minneapolis, people killed, homes wrecked, businesses hurt, families done, what would you be saying? Would you have the same response here on the floor of the Minnesota Senate if this was done by a president from your party who said publicly this is retribution? Would that be okay with you? I think the answer is no. And therefore, I ask you to say, what are we doing? We have the ability to help rural communities. We have the ability to help families, and we have the ability to help them right now, and we should. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, going back to earlier testimony, or testimony you want to call it, but people talking, Senator Draheim hit it. I met with all my counties before I came up here this year, most of them in December and January. And not one of my counties, I have 4, not one county said this is a need. Not one. They had a lot of other priorities, paid family leave, all kinds of different things that are going on in their communities and counties. Not one brought this up, not one. I know Senator Frentz as well was in Finance Committee and said not one of his counties requested this either. We're hearing that from lots of our members, that not any of our counties are requesting this. Not a priority. I think Senator Drazkowski also had a made point. I think this was an organized effort to people told by the Democrats not to work, not to do these things, to prove a point. I remember our governor, Governor Walz, after ICE was announced it was coming here, he said it's your civic duty to get out and protest. Your civic duty to get out and protest. That includes blowing whistles, yelling, screaming, spitting at our law enforcement. Now, I was an air traffic controller in the Navy for 4 years. And when I did my job and tried to keep airplanes in the sky, if I had somebody blowing a whistle, spitting, and screaming at me while I was trying to control airplanes, do you think things might have not been the best? That's what law enforcement was put on their plate when our Governor Walz said it's your civic duty to get out and protest. That's what he said. It was on the news. I watched it. So do you think that might have created an issue here in Minnesota? I believe it did. So this bill, again, is not a priority in any of my counties and many others. Putting a program together that is going to extend the waste, fraud, and abuse that we've seen in the state over many, many years. I remember my first bill on waste, fraud, and abuse was, I think, in 2018 with the Child Care Assistance Program and the fraud that was being done then. And when I'm in my district, the 2 things I hear, what is going on with the waste, fraud, and abuse? Why can't you as a legislator, my legislator, get that under control? Why can't you stop it? And they're mad. And I think there's a lot of people in both Republican and Democrat districts that are very upset because the money being wasted, the fraud, and the abuse are raising their property taxes on top of the $40 million, the increase that we had, the $19 billion surplus we had, the $10 billion increase of about 39.7% in state government, the largest increase in state spending in our history. And when they look at the bottom line of their property taxes, and they're going up 15 and 20%, and they can't afford it, they're frustrated. This is just another program that is going to be so susceptible to waste, fraud, and abuse. Members, vote no.
Senator Gustafson.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the last year and a half, the federal government has made life more expensive for Minnesotans. From the cost of housing, the cost of gas, the cost of groceries, it's all gone up. This bill is a way to help Minnesotans deal with the chaos of the federal government's actions. Senate File 3596 helps working families get through a short-term financial crisis without losing their housing. When a parent faces a sudden medical bill, a job disruption, or another unexpected expense, the risk of eviction can rise quickly. When that happens, it is children who experience the greatest disruption, losing stability, changing schools, facing uncertainty at home. This bill provides limited, targeted assistance through counties and tribal governments to help families stay housed during those difficult moments. This bill addresses affordability. It also makes sense to be proactive. Preventing an eviction is far less expensive than responding after a family becomes homeless, when communities must absorb the cost of their shelters, services, and school disruption. So by helping working Minnesota families stay on their feet and protect stability for children, Senate File 3596 addresses a problem early, avoids much larger costs later, and helps provide some relief to Minnesotans who are just trying to survive the federal government's agenda. I encourage a green vote.
Senator Gruenhagen.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I rise in opposition to this bill. I know that probably surprises some of you. No. For a host of reasons, I'll cover just a few of them. You know, one of the things to understand, there are economic laws, okay? And when you increase the size of government by 40% in a 2-year period, you raise taxes another $9 to $10 billion. No matter how well-meaning, that is an expense on the private sector. It drives up the cost of housing, it drives up the cost of rent, it drives up a host of other things. Usually it hurts the low-income people the most. So unfortunately, that's what the Democratic Party doesn't understand. They don't believe there's economic laws. They think they can grow government, you know, at 40% plus raise taxes another $9 to $10 billion. I have asked plenty of my people in my district, did your income go up in 2 years 40%? Nobody ever said yes. And yet they're expected to pay the taxes in to support all this. You can't grow government without hurting people, especially low-income people, when you grow government faster than the private sector. That's an economic law, whether you like it or not. It's like gravity. Secondly, we've heard quite a bit of rhetoric about the federal government. Well, members, if we look at this bill, and especially the Lucero Amendment about lawful citizens, when you vote that down and therefore make it available to people who are here illegally, the thing you understand, you're threatening federal match. That's what you're doing. In fact, when we look at the state of Minnesota, because we have resisted the federal government in so many areas, we're having more millions of dollars frozen. So you're endangering, the very bill you have is endangering federal funding, and the result is it's going to hurt some of the people that need it the most. Not because of the federal government, it's because of laws in the state that resist the federal government. We also see, it's been talked about ICE. Well, when we look at other states and other areas, even Democrat, like Washington, D.C. or Memphis, which have Democratic mayors, they cooperated with ICE. And guess what? They didn't have the chaos that we had here in Minnesota. So again, it's Governor Walz and the Democrats asking for resistance and violence against ICE that has led to the problems that we see. Other states, even areas where Democrats are in charge that cooperated with the federal government, you didn't see these types of problems. So again, look in the mirror. There's the problem if you voted to resist ICE. We cooperate, we could get the violent criminals off of our streets, have a safer state, safer for our citizens. In fact, the latest statistic that just came out is that we had the lowest murder rate in the nation since 1900, members. We had the lowest murder rate in our nation since 1900. And a lot of those murders happen in minority communities. So you know which president is one of the greatest Black Lives Matter president? President Trump. He has saved more minorities by lowering the murder rate with ICE than any other president. In fact, if we look at the previous president under Biden, we see fentanyl pouring across our border, poisoning and killing over 100,000 of our young people a year. We see over 300,000 children missing, sold into sex exploitation, work exploitation, and a host of other exploitation. Under President Trump, over 145,000 of those children have been found and returned to a safe environment. So members, if you want to point fingers at sexual exploitation of children, you better look at the Democrat presidents. And as far as pedophilia is concerned, this body repealed one of two laws by the Democrats opposing pedophilia in the state of Minnesota. Again, look in the mirror and you see the problem. So members, let's cooperate with the federal government. We will get the federal matches we need that protect and are used for our children, address the fraud. Again, it's Minnesota that has caused these problems, specifically Governor Walz and the Democrats. And I know President Trump has said some things that I probably wouldn't have said. But remember, think of what he's been called. He's been twice tried to assassinate. He's been called all types of names. And sooner or later, we got to tone that rhetoric down. I've tried to do that personally, but calling ICE Nazis and Gestapo and all these other things, and even Governor Walz saying one day he wants to wake up and would be rejoiceful if President Trump was dead. He actually said that. That's the type of rhetoric that we see on both sides that needs to be toned down. So members, this bill puts a Band-Aid on an economic infection. The infection is we have grown government too big, too fast, too soon with taxes, regulations, and mandates. This has restricted new rental property, driving up the cost of rent for everybody else. It has restricted a whole host of other building, like residential building. And on top of that, we put mandates from the Green New Scam on new construction, which has basically brought it almost to a halt in many areas. So what's our solution with this bill? By God, we got to give them more, take money from somebody else and give it over here to try to help these, because we're the ones that caused the problem, the state of Minnesota. You need to look no further in terms of ICE, the hurting people with rental, than looking in the mirror and the bills that you passed to create this mess. Vote this down. Let's attack the real problem, the infection of mandates, Green New Scam, and a host of other things that are driving up our cost. Did I say I'm not voting for this bill? I hope so. It's the wrong direction, and it's a one-time money. And the thing is, as soon as it's gone, we're going to be back to the same problems if we don't address the real cause. And again, I have 5 counties, not one of them asked for this help. Please vote no. Let's care about the real citizens and return this state to some economic sanity. This is a good first step. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Hur.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill, authored by Senator Port, is a big help for people in my area, my district. The homelessness in the east side St. Paul is growing, and our seniors are at risk paying rent. You know, I'm not going to respond to the comment that's made, but for sure, no one in America or in this world want to be homeless. And no one want to be poor. And for the most part, no one want to be jobless. Just a few days ago, I got a text from one of my constituents. His name is Danielle, a hardworking American. I'm sure I mentioned the name. You probably think he's African American. Yes. Hardworking American in East Side St. Paul, running mom and pop restaurant business. And now he struggled because of current political situation that set us back. And he didn't text me about himself, but he texted me for his family in needs. And when he texted me, he said, I do not feel entitled to anything. I do not often ask for help. But this is the first time that my family member are facing homelessness and have difficulty paying rent. You know, in all smooth circumstances, if we are living well in a utopia, maybe nobody die, nobody get hurt, nobody get sick, nobody lose their job, we probably don't need help. But Danielle's family here faced death in his family. Now you have to take care of the deaf persons that pass away. Over that affect your employment. You lose job. And when you lose job, you have to struggle to pay rent. And I'm glad in this bill also have emergency rental assistance that go back to time of August 31st, 2025. In addition to that, I want to tell us a little story too, because a few stories here I mentioned affect largely resident of East Side St. Paul. In January, you probably seen an article, the Van family escaped from Vietnam no more than 2 years ago as refugee, and were legally coming here. They escaped persecution, religious persecution, because they are Christian. And this Christian family happened to live in my district. Their family were not just persecuted, their family member were incarcerated by their government and hoping that America would be a place for freedom for them. And 2 years ago, the family arrived, trying to enjoy American freedom, finding a job to help their family, raise their family here. In January this year, when ICE came door knocking, and they opened their door, because they're not familiar with this, how our society operates and what's going on out there. And the wife was taken away to El Paso, Texas, then shortly later thrown in the street of Houston, Texas, where they had no idea, where she had no idea where she was. That must be devastating, traumatizing. And while all the 2 weeks of ordeal, she lost her job as well. And there's no reason why she was arrested, because the family was just working on their green card. And these are people who are legal to be in our country. And add on to the suffering that Ms. Vang faced, not having her job because she's the breadwinner of the family, paying her rent. Almost every day, ICE agent or someone will go door knock with uniform on door knock her house that terrorized them. And she even tried to figure out how she will break the renter contract, and then where will she be safe to find another rental unit. And this bill will help residents like that. Residents like Danielle's family, who didn't know what we do here. He just randomly text me and call me. He only knows that I'm a state senator. He doesn't really know what we do here. But I said, Danielle, maybe pay attention to the debate that I might have a few days from now. So perhaps he's watching. So this is just a few examples. And I don't want to get into the subject of religion so much. But as a new American, well, not so new now, I've been here 49 years. As I see what happened in the street in Minneapolis, I see armed military folks with guns and then push against people who blow, whistle, and chant. And some get hurt, some got killed. And may God bless their soul for that. Never expect that that will happen in America. But what I see is similar to Jew and Gentile and Christian stand together fighting against the oppressor. That's my view. And I still feel so welcome being that this is a Christian nation and we should give love to other. And what I see, what happened in the street in Minneapolis and East Side St. Paul, where they dragged my cousin in nude. That shouldn't happen. And I see black and brown folks, Norwegian, Scandinavian, blow their whistle, said, don't arrest that man. And if this is not Christian value, I don't know what to say. Thank you, and I wholeheartedly support the yes for Senator Port's bill, and the housing assistance bill will be a big help for my district and many metro part. Thank you.
Senator Western.
Thank you, Mr. President, members. Let's take a little trip down memory lane here and realize how the Democrat Party that's been in charge during the trifecta, been in charge of the Senate. We've had massive fraud problems revealed in our state. Fraudsters left and right, daycares that have no students but are charging for phantom students, defrauding the taxpayers. And so what we've got on the Senate floor here today is more evidence that the Democrat Party doesn't get it. Doesn't get that Minnesota has a massive fraud problem.
They rush this bill through, raiding $40 million that was set aside for property owners that were in distress and had their properties foreclosed, and counties illegally seizing the equity in their property using state law that's been on the books for decades. And we had a fund to reimburse those property owners, and they are raiding that here today, rushing a bill through that they couldn't even follow the Senate rules and give a 3-day notice to have parties contribute or offer input so we could address issues of concern. Anybody see a problem going on here? It's like trying to bake some bread and rush it. It'll only rise so fast. And you have to go through ample procedures to have a better product come out in the end. Well, that's what's going on here. Democrats rush through, ignore Senate rules, say it's impracticable to have 3 days' notice for people to come to testify and be transparent in committees. Just a week ago, that happened in the Judiciary Committee. Went from taxes to judiciary the same day in violation of the Senate rules, unless it was impracticable. Well, we've got 2 months of session going on yet. It's a stretch to say it was impracticable. But now we've got a so-called finished product by the Democrats with the background of all the fraud that's been revealed in our state this past year. And now they want to pass more legislation quickly that's ripe for fraud. And Republicans brought the amendment forward to say, at least let's restrict fraudsters. And every Democrat voted no. If they've been charged or convicted of fraud, defrauding Minnesotans, Democrats voted that down in such a hasty rush to get this unfinished product raced out the door, raiding the $40 million from the fund that's supposed to help property owners that were cheated out of their equity in a foreclosure process. And Democrats' solution is to the fraud problem, let's send more bills out that are unfinished, don't protect against fraudsters, and we'll just hope that it doesn't continue in Minnesota. Hope is no plan to stop the fraudsters, but that's the Democrats' plan. Let's just hope. Hope the fraudsters won't be there to collect this $40 million that we're raiding from the homeowners that were cheated out of their equity on their foreclosed property in Minnesota. So I hope you see a problem with this recipe. There was multiple other amendments voted down. Another amendment said, at least let's make sure it goes to Minnesota residents or legal that are here legally. Let's at least restrict this Minnesota taxpayer money to residents of Minnesota that are either citizens or here with legal status. Democrats voted that down 100%. All Democrats said no, Republicans said yes. These are ways to prevent fraud ignored by the Democrats continually. How long is it going to take them, the Democrats, to admit we really have a fraud problem and rushing bills through this legislature, taking no constructive input, ignoring testifiers in committee? And we're supposed to believe this is a good bill that's going to protect the taxpayers' money and go to the people it's intended for. I'm not buying it. And you shouldn't either. We can do much better, but not as long as the Democrats keep their heads in the sand, rush things through, and use hope as their best defense against fraud. It ain't going to happen. And so, members, I'd urge a no vote on this. Senator Port, you can do much better. You can find the money somewhere else. You don't have to steal it from the homeowners. But put some guardrails in place that would at least say the fraudsters don't get another crack at Minnesota money that gets handed out. $40 million. That's ripe for more fraud, available for illegal immigrants that are here illegally. And the problem is, that means Minnesota residents, hardworking as they are, get less money because the residents that are citizens or have legal residence here get less of this money if it was to pass the House of Representatives too. Because those here illegally are going to get their share of this pot under the Democrat plan. More free money for people here illegally at the expense of hardworking Minnesota citizens. Free health care, free food if you're here illegally, but if you're here as a Minnesota citizen with legal residence, you get to go to the back of the line because we're going to spend this money for those that are here illegally, those that have committed fraud to the state. This is an easy no vote. The Senate can do much better work than this, and we can start that new day by voting no and putting the Senate on a much stricter path to protecting the taxpayers and quit using hope as our strategy to not be defrauded anymore, as the Democrats are putting forth today.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, members. I rise today in strong support of Senator Port's bill, Senate File 3596, to provide emergency rental and utility assistance to Minnesotans who are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. And Mr. President, before I get further into my comments, I just want to invite our colleagues to spend some time maybe visiting with the people we're talking about. I want to just share with you a little bit about a family that my family supports. I go to a Catholic church, and this church is supporting the volunteers. The members of our congregation are supporting 138 families with our time and our resources and our efforts on their behalf. We have 185 volunteers who are engaged in that work. Mr. President, members, I could not be more proud of the people of Minneapolis, the people of Minnesota, who are standing up for each other in what can be characterized as a time of just almost unbelievable crisis foisted upon us by our own federal government. Mr. President, members, the family we support, a mom with 3 kids, kind, hardworking, loving, and scared out of their minds, traumatized by what they've experienced in their lives and the lives of their friends and family and people that they go to school with. They weren't taking anyone's instruction to stay home. They don't even want to go outside to get their mail or take out their garbage. They feel trapped in their own home because they feel endangered by the actions of their own government. And Mr. President, I don't know what my colleagues are talking about when they say there's no issue, there's no crisis, because the county commissioner hasn't called them up or the county administrator hasn't called them up. I would invite all of you to just go out into your community and talk to your neighbors and friends. We are facing a housing affordability crisis of historic proportions. Nearly half of renter households in Minnesota are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income to keep a roof over their heads. More than a quarter are spending over half of what they earn just to stay housed, and seniors on fixed incomes are sometimes spending as much as 73% of what they take in to keep a roof over their head. We have seen a record number of eviction filings, 25,000, the highest number on record. On any given night, we have 8,000 people who are experiencing homelessness, and seniors are the fastest growing group at risk. Members, Senator Port led the Federal Impacts on Minnesotans Committee, Subcommittee of Rules. A number of colleagues from both sides of the aisle were a part of that. We traveled the state. I don't know, are we telling ourselves, telling the public that the Channel 1 food shelf and food bank in Rochester was lying to us when they said that they are having a record number of visits? We know that just in the last year, the visits to our food shelves are up 150%. That's 2.5 times, members. 1 in 5 families are struggling to afford their foods, and seniors are being hit the hardest. And let's just be honest about what is driving this economic pain. Federal actions has sent the cost of everyday life skyrocketing. Tariffs alone are costing every single household, have already cost every single household in this state $1,700 more per year. Utility bills are rising. Thank you, President Trump. Gas prices are rising. Thank you, President Trump, for this quagmire of a war he's leading us into. Groceries are rising. And this aggressive federal immigration enforcement, hardly law enforcement, is more like a military action with all the uniforms and weapons and tools of warfare being waged on Minnesotans, has disrupted our workforce and our local economy, has cost our region hundreds of millions of dollars in lost wages. We have an estimate that consumer spending is down more than $600 million statewide, $106 million in lost wages. So Mr. President, when the federal government destabilizes the economy, who pays? Working families pays. They are the ones who feel it first, and housing is often the first bill they can no longer keep up with. And so, Mr. President, members, rental assistance is one of the most effective tools we have to prevent eviction, to prevent homelessness. It helps families stay stable, keeps children in their schools, allows seniors to remain in their homes, prevents crises that are far more expensive for us to address later. So, Mr. President, this bill is a practical step we can take right now to help Minnesotans weather an economic storm they did not create, courtesy of the President of this country. Members, when people are struggling, the government's response is simple, and in Minnesota, we stand up for each other. We are under relentless attack from this president, but we are keeping to our solemn commitment to take care of people we love, to take care of the people of this state. Keep them safe, stable, and housed, Mr. President. I urge everyone's support for Senate File 3596. We see with our eyes. We know what's happening. No rhetoric in this floor, no handouts full of hot language can dissuade us from our solemn vow and our solemn mission. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Holmstrom.
Mr. President, members, I rise in opposition to this Rent for Riots bill, a $40 million pilfering of taxpayer money. I agree with the author. Nothing in Minnesota is affordable right now. Democrats just spent through a $17 billion surplus, an unprecedented overtaxing of our citizens. The majority then raised spending by 40% and increased the tax burden by another $10 billion. $6,900 per Minnesota family. Again, I agree with the author. Affordability is a real issue in Minnesota, but nothing has gotten more unaffordable for Minnesota families than the cost of running government. We need to have a conversation about personal responsibility in this chamber. Not every problem warrants a government solution. The hardworking, tax-paying families in this state work tirelessly to meet their financial obligations. It is now unconscionable for us to apply a new burden that hands their money to illegal aliens, sex offenders, and somehow even convicted fraudsters. I ask for your vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Marty.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Senator Port for the amazing work on this bill. It's critically important. And I think she mentioned earlier in her opening remarks about how the funding came here as a result of Geraldine Tyler, who had to fight back against a government that acted illegally, taking away her home and her assets. That's why the legislature had to fund what we've now since called the Tyler settlement. And I hope and believe Mrs. Tyler would be pleased that we're taking the balance of those settlement funds and using it to help other people who have been assaulted in many cases and terrorized by their own government. People who had to stay home from work because of that. I was told by one of the speakers earlier that some people were encouraging others to stay home from work. I was one of them. Afghani refugee family who fled Afghanistan with no notice because they had served the U.S. military, and when the country left, they had to flee for their lives. A woman in that family who works at a hospital needed rides to get to work. She was so terrified, lawfully here, so terrified to leave her home, she needed people to get to work. Got a call from her one night at the hospital because ICE had come to the hospital, and the hospital administrators were saying, we can't guarantee people's safety, so make yourself scarce and hide. And she hid in the restroom for a couple hours. The terror is real. I know of others, American citizens, lifelong American citizens, but whose ethnicity or race isn't the same of most of us in this chamber, who was targeted because of that, who was able, fortunately, to work from home for a couple months because of the terror of going out. Oh, yes, if she was arrested improperly or assaulted, she'd probably be released in an hour, maybe a day, at worst, maybe a couple days. But when you see how people were roughed up and how they were treated and assaulted, agents who did things that if any Minnesota law enforcement agent did them would be fired. Rodney King in Los Angeles 25, 30 years ago made national news for weeks because how he was brutally assaulted by law enforcement. Law enforcement doesn't do that anymore. But when you see people, not because there's a suspicion of them other than their race, where ICE, and you've seen the videos where they punch out a car window because the person wouldn't roll it down, and they pull them out of the car and throw them to the ground. And then they ask them for identification to see if they're really somebody they should be arresting. That causes terror to people. For those of us who are white and not likely to be a target of ICE in this case, I think back when I was a school kid, hearing the stories of survivors from World War II, and they were very graphic about the terror that people felt. Jewish residents of Berlin in the early 1930s, they tried to live their normal lives. They go to work, kids go to school, but you never know if you're coming home. That's what was going on in Minneapolis, in communities throughout the state in the last couple of months. People were in terror, including American citizens, including lawful residents. People were terrorized. And when you put them into that, and they ask you, should I go to work? I know employers who are telling their employees stay home because they knew the risk was too great. So just like the reason we had to put money into the Tyler settlement, because in that case, state and local governments did illegal actions against Minnesotans. In this case, where the federal government is assaulting people in ways that no law enforcement agency would get away with. Assaulting people, they didn't even know who they were in most cases. They had to ask them for identification to prove who they were so they could know if it was okay to arrest them. What we had was the most shameful assault on civil liberties I've ever seen. And when our government, our own government, hurts people like that, we have an obligation to make sure they don't lose their housing because they couldn't go to work because it wasn't safe to. And the terror, maybe some people in this room don't know what that terror is like, but I can assure you, when lifelong Minnesota residents are scared to go to work because they see what's happening to other neighbors, that's real. And I'm not ashamed of telling them to stay home from work when you're scared for your life. And I'm really proud that Senator Port is taking people who are struggling to pay for their housing and recognizing when the government does a wrong to people, we have an obligation as a government to make it right again. Thank you, Senator Port. I urge your support for the bill.
Senator Rest, and she'll be followed by Senator Lucero. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. President. When I go to sleep at night, I am angry. When I wake up in the morning, I am angry, and I can't believe that I've ever slept. But today is almost like no other day in this Senate, and I am so privileged to be a member. I'm grateful for Senator Port and her shining example of what it means to be a servant leader. I am not angry when I sit here in this chamber, listening to everyone, not getting up, not looking at my phone, but listening to you speak your minds, speak from your heart in a celebration of our Constitution. This bill started out with a promise. That promise has been fulfilled with this bill. And I promised myself, again, that I would listen to everyone's voice as you and your constituents deserve. Each in your own way, and I am so appreciative of it, has contributed to the success of this bill, of this effort, and it's going to pass. It's going to pass. The dollars that are being used arose from a righteous purpose that has been celebrated today in the life of Mrs. Tyler. And that purpose today continues on for the people of Minnesota. When I see the vote on that board, I will be so grateful, not just to my colleagues, but the great and generous spirit of all the people of our wonderful state. On behalf of my family and myself, I am so grateful for the actions of this Senate as we pass that challenge to the Minnesota House and ask them to do likewise. My family and I are so proud to call ourselves people of this land, this Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Lucero, then will be followed by Senator Pyle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am wondering if the bill author would yield for a question.
Senator Port, will you yield? She will yield. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Port. I was wondering if you have any estimates on how long the $40 million in the bill will last at rates of applications for rental assistance.
Senator Port to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that question, Senator Lucero. The information that we have, and part of the reason that I know it was mentioned that this bill changed costs throughout the process, is because the information that we received from Twin Cities, Greater Twin Cities United Way, who runs the 211 hotline, estimates that for the course of the next 3 months, there is a need for $75 million in rental assistance. We know that this isn't enough, but this was a revenue neutral portion that we could move right now as we continue to discuss the other choices that we make through the legislative process.
Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Port. If she would yield for another question.
Senator Port, will you yield? She will yield. Senator Lucero.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Port. My next question, Senator Port, is I would draw your attention to line 5.21. It says that this section expires the last day of the 4th month following the month of the effective date. And my question is, let's just say this were to be signed into law this month, the month of March. Does the month of March count as the first month? In which case, the last day would be June, I think? Or would it be the next month? Would it be April, in which the last day of the month of July? If she would clarify, if it was enacted this month, when would the last day be?
Senator Port to the question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Lucero. If it is both passes the House and signed in this month, March would be the first month.
Senator Lucero.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So there's an estimated $75 million for the next 90 days, I think that's what I heard, of need out there. And that's all I'm going to ask of Senator Port to yield. So there's an estimated $75 million of rental assistance needed for the next 3 months. And so the dollar amount in this bill is approximately half that. So there's going to be roughly 6 weeks. And if we go back to the last time we had a rental assistance bill passed during the COVID era, the assistance dollars were exhausted incredibly fast. So we have the moratorium that's in this bill is going to last for 4 months in terms of the 30-day requirement for a pre-notice. And yet the funds are likely going to be exhausted within a month or a month and a half, I would estimate, if that. And as I've read the bill, I don't see any requirement in here that somebody that is receiving the moratorium, the eviction moratorium, even has to apply for the rental assistance. And so there will be people out there that have no intention of applying for assistance, but are simply going to create a hardship for their housing provider by not paying rent and then not being able to be evicted. I remember during the COVID era and the last time there was a moratorium, many constituents called me. There is an idea that a housing provider is some multi-million-dollar company. But the constituents that called me, they are mom and pop. They might own an extra house. It might be a duplex. They might be renting out their basement to a tenant. And so I've heard the conversations taking place here, about this is going to save us money, it's going to save the state money, spending or saving money now will save us more money than would otherwise be spent in the future. But Mr. President, this is other people's money. This is the money of the taxpayers. And when I compare those phone calls I received the last time this rental assistance or a rental assistance was put out there and a moratorium was put in place, there was a single mom who called me and she was crying because it was just her and her kids who owned another house. She had one house. And when the moratorium was put in place, the tenant who was there at the time stopped paying rent and had no intention to apply and didn't apply, as far as I understand, for any assistance. They abused the process. And that single mom asked me what she should do. And I couldn't provide her any answers. Because you can't force the tenant to apply, but yet they can force that single mom to have to house them and pay their bills, paying their excessive usage of electricity, excessive usage of water. And that is what is so angering about this. Democrats claiming that they're saving money and that they're helping Minnesotans when they're actually confiscating other people's property, putting restrictions in place, and forcing housing providers to pay the bills of others who may have zero intention of applying for these incredibly limited funds. I also look at this bill, and I don't see any requirement in here that there be proactive, affirmative steps to ensure and protect against fraud. We know in this day and age, and we know that there is fraud running rampant throughout this state. The ability to manufacture a lease and then to manufacture claiming that they're a tenant between two friends, applying for rental assistance. Minnesotans do not trust government and the lack of checks and balances that are in here to protect against fraud. I've heard stories characterizing the attacking of law enforcement, the rioting that we saw. We saw criminal rioters surrounding hotels, banging on drums, banging and breaking windows, committing criminal damage to property. Characterizations of these illegal checkpoints that are stood up in the middle of roads in Minneapolis. Law-abiding citizens that are going about their business, visiting family, perhaps trying to get to a job, they are illegally being stopped by these criminal thugs at these makeshift checkpoints. And the characterization on this floor today that those that were engaging in this criminal behavior are beautiful. The Democrats on this floor characterize such behavior as they responded beautifully. What this is lawlessness. Lawlessness. In fact, this month, the socialists attempted a rent strike, actively organizing against those that are simply trying to provide good housing. That is a manufactured crisis provoked and promoted by Democrats. The lawlessness of attempting to normalize illegal behavior, such as taxpayer-provided health care, taxpayer-permitted driver's license for illegal immigrants, taxpayer-funded college tuition paid for to illegals is attracting them to this state. Then, when laws that are already on the books are simply enforced that previously had not been enforced, that's not an attack by the federal government. That's not any of the false characterizations that Democrats have claimed. Instead, it is promoting lawlessness. In the last riots that Minneapolis had several years ago, I toured some of these immigrant businesses along University Avenue. I know Senator Cran, if I remember correctly, was there. I don't remember, it was a group of legislators. And I distinctly remember the story that was heartbreaking as we went from business to business, listening to the business owners' testimony of their experiences of fear as these rioters broke into their businesses. And in one particular instance, again, along University Avenue there, he didn't even speak English. I cannot remember what country he was from. But he described, it was a clothing store. He described how he was at his business that night, and these rioters came into his business. He had worked for 30 years, if I remember correctly. Because the country he came from, he didn't trust the banking system, he didn't trust the government. He had his life savings in a safe in the basement of that business. He had the title to his house. He had everything that he has accumulated and worked so hard for. These criminal rioters came in, provoked and encouraged by Democrats, by the way, stormed into his business, stole everything that he had in inventory, broke into that safe, and stole his life savings. As he was describing that for us, he had the translator there, he began to cry. That's what I remember. That's the lawlessness that the Democrats encouraged then and the lawlessness that they encouraged today. The Signal Chat, the organization, this is not an organic swelling up of people. These are lawless thugs that are taking advantage. And they are creating fear in law-abiding citizens. In the bill that was debated, we had several amendments. And they were voted down. Why were those amendments voted down? Because Democrats are proudly redistributing wealth to illegal immigrants. Democrats, they voted down the amendment that would have prohibited tax dollars from going to those that are convicted or charged of committing fraud. Democrats voted down the Republican amendment that would have prohibited these funds from going to sexual predators. Mr. President, this is not what Minnesotans want. Minnesotans don't think lawlessness is beautiful. Minnesotans don't think that these criminals, these sexual predators, these illegal immigrants should be able to stay in their house and not be evicted. We are creating a moral hazard here in Minnesota. Because the government, because Democrats continue to spend taxpayer dollars on assistance program after assistance program after assistance program, people are becoming acclimated and accustomed to government constantly bailing them out. People make the conscious decision not to work hard, not to sacrifice, not to set that alarm for 5 a.m., to get up and fulfill their responsibilities for their own family. Instead, they'll say, Democrats will just bail us out. In fact, let's take the day off. Let's go blow whistles at ear-piercing sounds in the ears of our law enforcement professionals. Let's put them at danger. And then let's go and we'll do this socialist rent strike And then Democrats will allow, well, they'll pass the moratorium so we can't be evicted, and then they'll pay for our rent. People are being conditioned with the false expectation that government will bail them out. So, friends, there are good people that are certainly struggling, but they are struggling not because of some of these false claims you've heard. They are struggling because of the policies that the Democrats have passed in the last number of years that are driving up property taxes, that are being passed along in the cost of goods and services, that are making Minnesota less affordable. This does nothing to solve the root cause of the unaffordability in Minnesota. Mr. President, I highly encourage a red vote on this so that we can have some serious bills that actually tackle what Minnesotans want. Thank you.
Senator Parr, followed by Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this bill. I want to share a story of a family, a man that's in my district. His name is Vang. Vang came to the United States legally as a child refugee more than 40 years ago. When Operation Metro Surge began last year, everything changed for Vang's family. He saw people taken by ICE, separated from their families. He began to feel that any chance encounter with ICE could separate him from his family and children. Vang became afraid to leave his home and go anywhere, afraid to go to work. For the first time in 20 years, he was afraid to go to work. He has been a paying tax member for 20 years. So the idea that people who need this assistance don't work, don't pay property taxes, or don't pay state taxes, and that they're just lazy, is absolutely offensive. To these taxpayers, falling behind on hard times is something that they did not want, whether they were illegal immigrants or citizens. When 7 out of 10 households all across Minnesota, including rural communities, are living paycheck to paycheck, sudden loss of income, whether it's because of federal ICE operations, the loss of a job, an unexpected medical expense, or a family emergency, their housing stability quickly becomes at risk. And when housing becomes unstable, everything else in a family's life, especially children's lives, become unstable too. And those have very many negative and serious rippling effects. So our responsibilities as legislators are clear: to help keep families housed, children safe, and communities strong. Mr. President and members, we need to pass this bill because families across Minnesota, our constituents, are depending on us to do so. Thank you.
Senator Johnson Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to go on record as saying that I have attended many peaceful protests in the last few months, and I have not spit on anyone, nor has anyone that I was with. I did see many of my neighbors, frankly, lots of middle-aged women just like me, peacefully protesting, as is our right. I also want to go on record as saying I have never told anyone to stay home from work, but I certainly understand why some would choose to do so, especially if they are people of color, considering the indiscriminate arrests of many of our neighbors, many of whom are U.S. citizens. And remember, thousands of Minnesotans have been arrested in the last 2 months and detained, making it frankly impossible for them to go to work. Hundreds of them are still detained. In the past few months, ICE agents have been parking at entrances to construction sites for weeks, waiting for workers to show up. This has resulted in two things: crews walking off the job or not showing up at all due to fear of harassment, violence, and arrests. And this is regardless of their immigration status. I have been talking to colleagues in the construction industry. One reported that ICE activity at home construction sites has resulted in more loss of business than they experienced during COVID. The home building industry has reported 30% loss of revenue. And it's important to note that immigrant workers account for roughly 25% of the construction workforce, and we haven't even gotten to the heavy highway season yet. Just wait to see what that slowdown does to our economy. We have seen ICE activity all over my district, but most notably at restaurants and on home construction sites. ICE agents have parked at the entrances or driving around simply looking for job sites to disrupt. In my neighborhood, we have seen several cases of workers specifically in the construction industry being trapped on the roofs of the houses that they are working on. One was up there so long that he was hospitalized for frostbite. These workers were only guilty of trying to support their families. They were arrested and hauled off, in some cases to unknown locations. Now, missing work for days or weeks and experiencing significant trauma for themselves, their workers, their coworkers, their friends, and their families. Consider, at low wages, a roofer makes $20 an hour. Missing one honest day of work results in a loss of income for his family of $160. Missing 1 week of honest work results in a loss of income of $800 for his family. And missing 1 month of honest work results in a loss of income of over $3,000. So how do you expect them to pay their rent? These are families that live paycheck to paycheck, and a loss of income is devastating, especially considering that they're already devastated by significant rising costs in heating their homes, in feeding their families, in gassing up their cars. We've heard about the rising cost of gas. Just since President Trump decided to bomb Iran, the price of gas has gone up 50 to 60 cents per gallon. These families are broken and they're terrified. We have an opportunity to provide some real relief to those of our friends who have directly suffered from ICE's invasion on our communities. Where I come from, we take care of our neighbors. I heard just last night of friends in a local church who have raised $46,000 of their own money to provide rent relief in our neighborhoods. A local food shelf that I recently toured reports providing thousands of dollars in rent relief and in food relief. This is money for families. We are caring for our neighbors where I come from, and I'm proud to support Senator Port's bill.
Members, I have one more before I'm going to Senator Port. I want to make sure that I didn't forget anyone, so no one comes to me and says I ignored them. I'm now going to Senator Muhammad. You okay? All right. Senator Port.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I want to correct a few things. First, there is no eviction moratorium in this bill. There never has been. There is a notice required that is now 30 days instead of 14 days, but there is no eviction moratorium. I also want to note that we are on track with 2025 eviction filings. I know that was said as like, it's fine, we're on track with 2025. But 2025 was the year we had the most eviction filings in the history of the state of Minnesota. That's not a good stat to be in line with. It's also only at that level because of the incredible generosity of Minnesotans who have raised millions of dollars to keep their families, their neighbors safely, stably housed. This funding ensures that our neighbors, families, seniors, and children have the stability that they need to remain safely in their homes. And not just Minnesotans in my district or in the metro. The housing crisis and the affordability crisis foisted upon us by this federal government is statewide. Greater Minnesota saw a 53% increase in unsheltered homelessness. When people are experiencing homelessness in Greater Minnesota, and especially in small communities, they are struggling more than anywhere else in the state to find shelter. In the district represented by the Senate from Lonsdale, there are 4,155 renter households, and 43% are cost burdened, paying more than 30% of their income. 17.5% are paying more than half their income on rent. In the district represented by the senator from Lakeville, there are 3,329 renter households, 46% of whom pay more than 30%, and 30% of whom pay more than 50% of their income on rent. In the district represented by the senator from Little Falls, there are 5,774 renters, with 41% of them paying more than 30%, and 18% severely cost burdened by spending over half their income. In the district represented by the senator from Glencoe, there are 6,200 renters, and 38% of them are cost burdened, 20% severely cost burdened. In the area represented by the senator from St. Michael, there are 4,192 renters. Over a third of them cannot afford their rent, and 12.5 of them spend more than half of their income on rent. In the area represented by the senator from Madison Lake, there are 6,800 renter households, and a massive 42.5% of them spend more than 30% of their income on rent. 15% spend more than half of their money to keep a roof over their heads. In Mazeppa and surrounding areas represented by a senator who has never met a hungry person, there are 6,765 renters, and 42% of them pay more than 30% of their income on rent. And finally, in the district represented by the senator from Faribault, there are 8,122 renters, and a staggering 54% of them spend more than 30% of their income on rent, and almost a quarter of them spend more than 50%. You may not have heard from your counties. Some of you have said this is not a priority of any of my counties. But in the district represented by the senator who said that, Rice County has asked for assistance from the cities in the district. The CDA came to Faribault and Northfield and asked for assistance for rent help. Northfield passed $50,000 in rental assistance to give to the county. Counties are asking for this. Our friends are asking for this. Our neighbors are asking for this. I don't know who some of my colleagues are talking about when they talk about Minnesotans. I don't know these people that they're referencing. What I know, and I've seen over the course of the past 6 months, is moms in minivans and dads in the daycare line. Workers with whistles and grandmas with Costco accounts standing up for our neighbors, helping people stay safe and stable. Mr. President and members, I appreciate the robust discussion we've had today. I want to bring us back to the reason for this bill. Minnesotans need our help. They need us to make good policy decisions that help Minnesotans all over the state. Kids and seniors, veterans and survivors of domestic violence, workers and retirees, putting the resources that we have available towards renters who are struggling in an unprecedented crisis is good policy. Preventing evictions and homelessness is good policy. And I do want to take a moment to say thank you to those Minnesotans who stepped up and raised millions of dollars in mutual aid to help keep our communities stable until we could come back to session and respond as a state. We have heard the warnings from housing organizations who see a tidal wave of evictions looming. We have the power to stop at least part of this crisis. If we can avoid the crisis, we're not just helping renters. We're helping property owners who depend on rent for income. we're helping kids avoid the trauma of homelessness, and we prevent the need for more costly interventions down the line. We are standing up for Minnesotans. This is the first DFL bill to address affordability this session, but it will not be the last. We hear you, and we are responding. I hope that this is an easy vote. I hope you vote green.
Members, the Secretary will take the roll on final passage as amended to Senate File 3596. Senator Bowden, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Carlson votes aye.
Senator Carlson votes aye.
And Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye.
And Senator Umu Verbatim votes aye. Senator Jasinski, for those voting pursuant to Rule 40.7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Coleman votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Miller votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Curran votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Weber votes no.
Senator Heinzman votes no.
Senator Heitzman votes no.
And thank you, Mr. President. Senator Johnson votes no.
And Senator Johnson votes no. All senators having voted who desires to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There have been 35 ayes and 32 nays. The bill is passed and its title agreed to. Members, we'll now go to the 13th order of business, which is announcements of Senate interest. Any announcements of Senate interest? Without objection, the following senators will be excused from today's session. Pratt, 1125 to 1135. Senator Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Human Services Committee will convene 15 minutes after you say we're done for the day. So thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Putnam.
Mr. President, similarly, the Committee on Agriculture, Veterans, Broadband, and Rural Development will convene at 3:30 today.
Senator Latz.
Mr. President, Judiciary and Public Safety will convene immediately following adjournment. Members, please go straight down there. We only have until 3:30, thanks to Senator Putnam's adjustment in his starting schedule.
Senator Dibble.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Transportation Committee will convene at 3:15 in room 1100 of the Senate building.
Any other announcements of Senate interest? Seeing none, Senator Murphy.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until Thursday, March 12th at 11 a.m. We're done for the day.
On that motion, all in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. The motion prevails, and the Senate is now adjourned. Hey, sir.